This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate first part of What If Naruto Became Servant of the Abyssal God. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
A figure, covered in mud and dirt, leapt through the trees. If the fresh paint stains were any indication, the figure had made a concerted effort to change the color of the orange jumpsuit that screamed, "Kill me." The male figure stood out due to his distinctive features, which included cerulean blue eyes, spiky blonde hair, and 3 whisker marks on each cheek. Although he had a tan, his skin tone was still light enough to avoid being overly dark. He had a number of scars and bruises that appeared to have been there for years, and they were barely noticeable as his jumpsuit flapped around, exposing parts of his flesh. A 12-year-old academy student named Naruto Uzumaki was the figure. He would be taking the Genin exam today for the 3rd time. He never understood why the Konohagakure no Sato Council had ordered him to enter the academy 2 years prior, especially since the majority of the council detested him. He pulled out a canteen after landing close to a small pond, walked over to it, filled it with water, and dipped it in the pond. Even though the pond wasn't the best source of water, it was still better than what he could typically get. He was usually fortunate to get water that wasn't taken from a latrine by the food department. Naruto put the canteen to his mouth quickly and started guzzling down the water with greed. But with all the training they make only ME go through, that isn't likely to happen, Naruto said, wiping his face and removing the water from his lips before dipping the canteen in the water in the hopes that it would last him the entire day. The sun was still rising in the east when Naruto looked up at the sky. Based on his rough calculations, it would be time for him to leave for class when the sun rose above the big tree in the center of the field. Although Naruto was incredibly intelligent, at least in practical senses, he was a terrible reader and non-practitioner. However, when would he ever need to know which trees the Shoden planted in a real battle? He would have placed in the top 5 rankings if the class had placed more emphasis on practicality, but instead he was in the lower rankings, better yet, dead last, because of the excessive emphasis on reading and math, which had no use in real combat. Why'd I stay here? Why'd I put up with this shit? Naruto asked himself as he gazed up at the clouds. There is no reason why I can't leave since I am a civilian. According to Konoha law, a shinobi is obligated to stay in this village, but a civilian is free to leave whenever they want. So, really, why am I still here? Oh, I see now. In fact, Naruto had attempted to flee 5 times before, but Anbu had always caught him and returned him to the village. The Sandaime then gave him a heartfelt speech about how the Ichirakus and other kind people would miss him, and he gave in every single time. He had put up with the village's misery for far too long, and it was beginning to get to him. Now, however, he didn't care how many hearts he broke or whether people would miss him. When Naruto noticed that the sun was starting to set over the tree, he thought, if I don't pass this time, I'm leaving for good. Naruto stood up and was ready to leap in the direction of the academy when he noticed white light across the pond. Naruto looked around and was overcome with a flush at what he saw. The girl on the other side of the pond was arguably the most beautiful he had ever seen. Her flawless pale complexion reflected light around her like a mirror, and her blonde hair was so natural it looked angelic, unlike the kind he typically saw on whores. As she scanned her surroundings, her stunning silver eyes gleamed. She had an hourglass figure that rivaled that of the red-eyed woman he frequently saw staring at him with a mix of curiosity and disgust. Her arms were slim and smooth. Naruto studied her figure and was astounded by her ungodly beauty. Her bust was also pretty impressive. It must have been at least a D-cup, if not larger. However, the 2 wing-like tattoos on her back caught Naruto's eye. Yes, and she looked as nude as a newborn baby. Naruto fell into the pond while attempting to get a better look. The girl abruptly turned her head and gave Naruto a full body view. She was fully shaven, and Naruto could see that her nipples were perked up. Oh my Kami-sama, he is looking at me. What do I do? What do I do? The girl blushed as she saw Naruto staring at her. As though a divine summons had arrived, she received an answer. Prevent the stranger from drowning after he passed out due to blood loss. No, she exclaimed as she watched Naruto go under, immediately eschewing all morality and plunging into the pond. With a smile on his face and a vacant expression in his eyes, Naruto was sinking when the girl swiftly caught him and pulled him back to the surface. After throwing him to the ground and tearing off his jacket, which rendered it essentially useless, she slammed her palms into his chest and tried mouth resuscitation. Naruto coughed up a lot of water he had swallowed after a few seconds of doing this, spluttering and coughing. The girl was so close to Naruto that he blushed as soon as he turned to face her. The girl was startled to see Naruto's arms when she first saw them. His right arm appeared to have been mauled by a tiger and then spat back out, but his left arm was scarred quite severely. She was actually shocked that the arm was still functional. "Oh come on, that was my only fucking jacket, damn it." Naruto gasped as he swiftly grabbed the jacket and ripped off the sleeves. "Oh come on, that was my only fucking jacket, damn it." Naruto looked down after noticing her staring at him. His eyes widened in shock. Shit, shit, shit. I did not want this to happen. After shoving on the sleeves, Naruto turned to face himself and saw that he looked no better than before. However, at least his scars were concealed. He didn't require explanations or sympathy. Naruto pushed himself up and went toward the academy, but not before giving the girl a stern look and saying, "If you so much as consider telling someone about this, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your life." The girl glanced at Naruto. "How could someone go through so much pain in your life? Why don't you help him, Kami?" "Sama," she said, turning to face the sky. The girl didn't get a response. "Perfect, can't I ever get a break from this shit?" Naruto said as he made his way to the academy, avoiding the adults' stares on the street. When Naruto finally made it to the academy, he was just as angry as he had been the day before. The heir of the Akamichi clan was eating a bag of potato chips, while the heir of the Nara clan was sitting and observing the clouds. He went to the front gates and looked around, seeing the heiresses of the Haruno and Yamanaka families fighting over a piece of cloth that he had seen Sasuke throw out the day before. He witnessed the Inuzuka heir harassing the Hyuga heiress, and he saw the last Uchiha sitting in the shadows, looking unhappy. After catching the fleabag snooping on the women's bath, Naruto became very irate because he could not stand him and had no regard for women. On the day he first found the female body, he went to see what the Inuzuka was doing and ended up knocking over the wall he was peering through. He had also been masturbating to the sight of the nude women. Although Kiba had escaped the women's wrath, he had been their punching bag for hours. He vaguely remembered a strange feeling around his genital area during their beating, but he couldn't recall it. In addition, Naruto concluded that the fucking jerk needed to learn his place. In an attempt to avoid the male heir of the Inuzuka clan, Hinata said, Please Kiba, ID. Don't want T.to go out with Y.U. The Inuzuka merely gave her a scheming grin and pinned her to the wall. Kiba leaned closer to put his body against Hinata's, saying, "Oh please, I know you want me." "Hey Kiba." Kiba snapped his head around and growled as Naruto approached him. "What do you want, Dobi?" Naruto snatched Kiba by the front of his shirt and flung him back. As Akamaru started growling at the blonde, Kiba straightened himself. "I want you to stop hassling Hinata. Chan, she is her own person, and I doubt that her family will appreciate you trying anything sexual with her, so accept her answer of no, and leave her alone." "Yeah right, you little motherless shit." Kiba swung his arm at Naruto, who blocked it as he also drew out a kunai. "Oh really, and I am sure that the dead last bastard of an orphan is going to stop me, huh?" Kiba ran forward before stabbing Naruto. Naruto swiftly retaliated by hurling his own leg at the Inuzuka after Kiba swung his leg at him. Taking advantage of this, Kiba attempted to force the kunai into Naruto's head. In order to throw the Inuzuka off balance, Naruto twisted his back upon seeing the kunai. In the end, Kiba collapsed on his face. Naruto was going to hit Kiba to kill him when Kiba screamed. Having forgotten all about Kiba's pet, Naruto swore, "Get him Akamaru." He turned just in time to see Akamaru sink his jaws into his right arm. Akamaru's teeth sliced through Naruto's flesh, causing him to wince. Kiba rushed at him and slashed him across the chest before he could respond. Then, before he struck the blonde, Kiba kicked him in the rib cage. After Naruto was on his back, Kiba raised his kunai so that he could thrust it into Naruto's eyes. Kiba swung his kunai down, saying, "Say goodbye bastard, this is for my 2.san." However, Naruto drew his own kunai and crossed blades with Kiba before it could strike. Kiba was forced to hold his family's jewels after Naruto kneed him between the legs. The dog whimpered under Naruto's glare as he stood up and threw Akamaru off him. Hinata was trembling at the sight of the two fighting, so the blonde academy student turned to face her. "Hey, Hinata," Naruto said as he approached her. "You alright?" she asked him. "Anyo, I am O." "Okay." Hinata nodded her head as she stood up, then turned to face Naruto. "Naruto-kun, you're bleeding," she said, reaching into her pouch and preparing to take out a vial of healing cream. Naruto turned to see Kiba rising with a kunai in hand and murderous intent in his eyes. "Hey, you Dobi, I'm not finished," Kiba said. "I am going to kick your ass and show Hinata Chan that I am the best she can possibly get. She is mine." "Hinata is not yours, she is her own, she is not property, learn to deal with that," Naruto said, glaring at Kiba. All women are good for is for sex and cooking, snorted Kiba. Oh really? Then I suppose you think your mother, who is standing right behind you, is useless unless for sex and cooking? Naruto grinned as he peered behind the Inuzuka. The statement caused Kiba's eyes to widen. He slowly turned his head and prayed to Kami that Naruto was bluffing, but Kami was spitting on his words. Your mother, who is standing right behind you, he said. His mother, Sume Inuzuka, was standing behind him. She had a very angry expression on her face and was staring at Kiba with such a glare that it made him shudder. So, you think women are only good for sex and cooking, huh? Kiba trembled even more as Sume extended her claws. Once you graduate, you and I will be having a little chat. Sume pointed to Kiba's face with a gash. As his mother left, Kiba collapsed to the ground, failing to see Naruto and Hinata making their way to class. When Sasuke decided to sit next to him, Naruto had to struggle to keep his seat, so he opened the door and took his usual seat in the third row, closest to the walkway. Naruto-kun, Hinata said as she sat in the back of the room, observing Naruto as he unwinded in his chair. After a few minutes, there were roughly 27 children in the room. The doors were practically thrown off their hinges as two girls entered, one with blonde hair and a purple two-piece, the other with pink hair and a red dress. Not even a minute later, everyone heard trampling, and everyone moaned as they all thought, here we go again. Last Uchiha, fangirls Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka were the two most foolish of them, and Naruto cursed to himself. Out of my way, Naruto. Baka, Naruto cried out as he was abruptly yanked from his chair and flung headfirst into a nearby desk. He clutched his aching head as blood spurted from it. Hinata wanted to curse at Sakura, but she was too shy to do so. The class moaned and started to question why the person was allowed to test when they had to train for years for it. She has been approved of by several high-ranking individuals, including the Sandame, so I am sure she is qualified. Naruto picked himself up as Iruka and Mizuki entered the room. Alright everyone, we will now begin the genin tests. We will start with a written exam. But first, we have a new student. Iruka gestured to the door. The same girl Naruto had met that morning was there when the door opened, but she was dressed in a white hakama that accentuated her figure to perfection and showed off her two tattoos on the back. She had a pouch with numerous elaborate seals by her side, and she was giving Naruto a sidelong glance. Damn it. What the hell is she doing here? Naruto said, turning away quickly to avoid making eye contact. Hello, my name is Tenku. I hope that I can get along with my future comrades, the girl said, turning to the class. Which tree grown by the Shodem is the foundation for our village? Was one of the written tests that Naruto was the last to receive and was having difficulty with. Naruto detested these questions. They were merely information about a village that would be of no use to them later on, so why were they required to learn it? They submitted their tests after 30 minutes, but Naruto had completely failed because he had responded to every question with a new one. Alright, the next test is throwing weapons. You will each be given 10 kunai and 10 shuriken, and you will be expected to throw 5 from each arm, Mizuki said, turning to the class. Naruto cursed as he examined his right arm, which was incredibly uncontrollable following the attack 2 months prior. It was a miracle he was able to use the damn thing at all. 10 terrible kunai and 10 terrible shuriken were given to Naruto, who was last up. Since most academy students knew Naruto was right-handed, they were actually perplexed when he prepared the kunai in his left hand while glancing at the targets. Naruto hurled the kunai directly at the target, striking it in the bull's eye before they could exchange words. Naruto finished this procedure using his left hand's remaining kunai. Few academy students can do 5 bullseyes in a row, so Iruka was taken aback when Naruto did it. How dare that dobi, screamed Sasuke Uchiha inwardly, I deserve that power, not him. He must have cheated. Sasuke-kun could have done so much better, thought Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka. Hinata Hyuga grinned and said, Naruto-kun did a great job. Naruto Uzumaki. You certainly are interesting, Tenku said with a smile as she turned to face Naruto. Thank you, thank you. Naruto grinned at the group and bowed curtly in response to the class's mild cheers. Iruka was beaming. Very good Naruto, now, I need you to throw the kunai with your right hand. Naruto muttered a curse as he reached for the kunai, only to discover that his right hand could hardly hold them. He threw it, but it didn't even come close to hitting the bull's eye, instead, it flew straight past the post. The children who had been in awe of his abilities were now making fun of him. However, Tenku saw that Naruto's arm was shaking from something, and it wasn't him, while Hinata and Tenku were scowling that Naruto had missed. When Tenku tapped Hinata on the shoulder, she turned to face him and said, Tenku, what is it? Tenku gestured toward Naruto. Hinata nodded and said, I know that since you are a Hyuga, you probably have the Byakugan. I need you to use it on Naruto. Hinata's red face was a reaction to Tenku's next statement. I think someone might be rigging this test. Hinata quickly activated her Byakugan and scanned Naruto, shocked by what she discovered, realizing that if someone was cheating on Naruto's tests, it meant that someone wanted him to fail. In addition to the fact that Naruto's chakra network was out of sync and appeared to be obliterating itself, the chakra network in his right arm was fractured with the tendons of his muscles and nerves. From the appearance of things, the two had healed together. In fact, the arm appeared to be held together only by the chakra network that had pushed its way into his muscles. However, Hinata saw that with sufficient practice, the arm ought to have been able to throw kunai correctly. She then realized why Naruto was not throwing correctly. Mizuki was at the controls at the end of several chakra strings that connected to Naruto's arms. Hinata turned to face Tenku and said, Why is Mizuki Sensei changing Naruto's movements before he throws using some kind of chakra string? As Naruto was holding the final two kunai, Tenku narrowed her eyes and said, If he does not hit the target with at least one of them, he will fail this portion. She held up her hand and muttered something. The wind abruptly increased. Heavenly winds break the ties that bind this soul. Mizuki felt his chakra strings being disturbed and watched as Naruto threw the kunai straight at the target. Hinata saw the chakra strings waver and then break. Even though it wasn't much, the kunai's strike on the farthest edge was sufficient to let Naruto pass. When Naruto took out his final kunai, he looked at it and said, Please work. He threw it as hard as he could, and it sailed through the air, landing just outside the bull's-eye zone, but it was also buried halfway up the kunai's length, nearly reaching the beginning of the hilt. With a smile, Iruka said, Well done Naruto, you passed in the top 10 of this exercise. There was some mild applause. Although Naruto reached number 5 despite having damage to his right arm, the shuriken throwing was comparable. At last, they reached the final section, which was the ninjutsu section. After practicing the Bunshin no Jutsu for weeks, Naruto was incredibly tense once more. No matter how many times he performed chakra control exercises, he was never able to master it. Entering the room, Naruto stood before Iruka and Mizuki. Looking at Naruto, Iruka said, All right, Naruto Uzumaki, we'll need you to practice Kawarimi, Henge, and Bunshin no Jutsu first. If you don't succeed at even one of these, you won't be able to become a shinobi, am I right? Looking at Iruka, Naruto said, transparently clear, in a sardonic tone. This is bad, Mizuki said to Naruto, because if he passes this portion, then my plans are ruined. He smiled, but quickly covered it up, saying, That should work. Naruto switched with a chair by using Kawarimi. Good, now, henge into whomever you like, Iruka laughed as she signed the form. When a cloud of smoke cleared after Naruto's single-handed henge seal, the Sandaime Hokage appeared, but without his cage robes and dressed in combat gear. Naruto, why did you place combat equipment on the Sandaime? Iruka asked, impressed but perplexed as to why Naruto had equipped him with battle gear. Iruka was pleased with Naruto's response after he swiftly vanquished the henge and said, Ogg showed me his armor one day, so I thought I would try it out. Alright Naruto, now I need you to create at least 2 decent Bunshin. Bunshin no Jutsu, was said by Naruto, who sighed and sealed his hands. Inwardly, Mizuki thought, Chakra Cha-Cha Nami, Chakra Disruption Wave, and smiled. With 2 clones lying on the ground, Naruto stood erect as a cloud of smoke filled the room. Iruka murmured, I am sorry to say Naruto, but you failed this portion. Naruto turned to leave the room with a sigh. Naruto turned to Mizuki, perplexed as to why he would want Iruka to pass, and said, Oh come on Iruka, can't we let him pass? He did create 2 clones, and they would be useful for distraction. I am sorry Mizuki, but I can't consciously send Naruto into the field with such meager skills. I apologize, but I can't allow Naruto to become a shinobi. With a sigh, Naruto left, not really caring, saying, Well, it looks like it's time to go. Fortunately, I packed everything I own. As Hinata and Tenku watched Naruto go, their thoughts were identical. Everything is going to go to hell, and soon, afterwards. Go ahead and throw away your lives for a village that will only see you as cannon fodder. I will not be so foolish, Naruto sneered at the academy students as they greeted their parents. It was almost time for Naruto to leave. Hey, look, it's that boy. I heard he was the only one who failed. Serves him right. Yeah, he is after all. Hey, you know I can hear you. As Naruto's eyes narrowed, the 2 women discussing him turned to notice strands of chakra floating around the blonde. Immediately, the two women stopped talking and moved away from the blonde. Unaware of the pair of white eyes observing him, Naruto snorted and left the gates. The head of the Hyuga family, Heishi Hyuga, watched Naruto leave the academy grounds. He had hoped that Naruto would pass the test because he had enough power on the council to put him and his daughter on the same team. He wasn't a fool, though, because he had long noticed his daughter's crush on the blonde. As he turned to search for his daughter, he sighed, "I suppose the best I can do is hope that Hinata makes her move on him soon." 2. Sama. But when he heard his daughter's voice, he turned around and saw her running toward him with a young girl who had bleached blonde hair and a huge bust. "Hinata, what is it?" Hinata gasped as she raised her voice. 2. Sama, Naruto. Kun's tests were rigged. "Tell me everything," Heishi said, squinting his eyes and shaking his cane. Alongside Naruto whistling a tune, Naruto was making his way to his apartment, thinking, well, it's time to leave. Mizuki abruptly appeared in front of Naruto as he was about to leave for his house. "Hey Naruto. Look, I'm sorry that Iruka had to fail you, but..." Naruto utterly ignored Mizuki. He brushed past Mizuki and made his way to his apartment, saying, "Get out of my way." Mizuki gave Naruto a startled look, but he was cursing inside. He grinned and turned back to Naruto, saying, "Damn it, I need some way to get him to follow my plan, but how? Perfect." Naruto paused and glanced at Mizuki, who was following him. "You know Naruto, I heard that there is a jutsu that could not only let you pass, but also give you a great advantage over the rest of your fellow classmates. I don't mean to offend Mizuki, but I don't intend to die for a village that will turn on me as soon as it can claim me as an ally, unlike those fools. Furthermore, why should I give a damn about ruling over those fucking idiots?" Naruto started to leave, disregarding Mizuki's words. With Kiba graduating, there's a chance he'll be put on the same team as a woman. Naruto's eyes widened as he said, "It's a shame." He slowed his steps and thought about what might happen to poor Hinata if he and she were put on the same team. Holding his fists, Naruto was sickened by the thought of Inuzuka and aware that if he and Hinata were together, they would be alone. The idea of Kiba violating Hinata against her will made Naruto want to throw up. It was abhorrent. Despite his hatred for this village and his unwillingness to risk his life for it, Naruto would never permit anyone to sexually assault a woman, and Kiba was no exception. "Where is the jutsu?" Naruto asked Mizuki, his eyes glowing darkly. "Perfect," Mizuki smirked inwardly. "In other places." The sounds of pain and agony, the splattering of blood, and the black flames of oblivion licking at the rocks attached to them reverberated throughout this pitch black cavern, but this was something far worse than hell. The pit had a gloomy aura that was much larger than the combined aura of all the Biju. A dark figure was sleeping on a throne while it searched for its power. Its eyes opened abruptly, revealing glowing metallic colored orbs as red orbs illuminated its entire form. The figure smiled as it rose to its feet, displaying an outline of his body that was obviously humanoid, but he also had dark horns on his head and scraggly, spiky hair. The figure laughed. "At long last, he has finally given in, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha, ha 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 ha," as his body dispersed in a spray of shadowy wisps as he made his way to the cavern's top and into the light. "That evening, like hell I am going to let that accursed mutt hurt any woman like that, disgusting mongrel." Naruto may want to leave the village more than anything, but he would sacrifice that to ensure that rapists and molesters of women were destroyed, or kept as far away from their pleasure as possible, after landing in the middle of the clearing with the forbidden scroll in his arms. Kage Bunshin huh, oh, it seems I can use this for training, but no. Naruto flipped through the scroll. Let's see, and continued to look through it, growing more agitated with each jutsu he found. No, too weak, no, too flashy, enemies could avoid it before it hit, how the hell is that a dangerous attack? He threw the scroll, cutting his finger in the process. Oh my god, is there anything in this village that can assist me? While attempting to toughen the scroll, Naruto unintentionally spilled blood on a set of black markings. As a smaller scroll fell to the ground, there was a puff of smoke. Naruto watched it roll and noticed that it had writing on it. He bent down to pick it up and read the writing. To Naruto Uzumaki. This is mine? Naruto swallowed as he stared at the scroll, trembling with anxiety. He reached for the tie, keeping it closed, and trembled as he undid it. When the scroll rolled open, its contents were visible. Despite his better judgment, Naruto turned his head to the scroll and started reading its contents because he had a gut feeling that he wouldn't like what was on it. He wasn't sure why. Kami. At the same time, Hokage Tower, are you absolutely certain, Heishi? Are you 100% certain that what you have told me is the truth? Asked Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was staring at Heishi Hyuga and disliking every word that came out of his mouth. Yes, I am sure, Heishi said, nodding his head. Everything indicates that Mizuki has been manipulating Naruto's grades, so his academy failure was not his fault. Heishi turned to face the Sandaime and started to rub his chin. True, well, this is good news. However, we need a total of 3 votes from the clan heads. Hiruzen was ready to try to find a way to win over the other clan heads to his cause. Granted, the only people who didn't like Naruto at all were Choza, Inoichi, and the now deceased Fugaku. Shibi didn't care about the boy at all, and Sume believed that as long as the boy stayed away from her clan, she had no issues. Shikaku thought it was too much work. Only Heishi and himself were explicitly adamant about helping young Naruto. Hiruzen looked up at the now smiling Heishi and sighed, leaning back in his chair. Well then, it's a good thing that we have 3 votes now, don't we? Hiruzen asked. The chair in front of the Sandaime's desk was occupied by Heishi, who asked, What do you mean, Heishi? Have you forgotten, when Minato died, he left me as the caretaker of his clan seat? Hiruzen's eyes grew wide, and then he grinned broadly. As he gazed out the window, Hiruzen frowned and said, Excellent. I will make sure to have this applied to the council. Still, I wish we could reveal his heritage like Minato asked. Yeah, same here. But how would he take it when he finds out? Heishi scowled as he peered out the window. With a sigh, Hiruzen took out his pipe and said, I pray Heishi, that we never have to find that out. Naruto is back. With his hands shaking and his eyes wide, Naruto gazed at the scroll. There it was. A word on the parchment that I couldn't believe. Everyone can see it clearly. The scroll that was addressed to him contained all of the answers to his final questions from the previous few years. Greetings. Naruto Uzumaki, you are either a genin or you were at least 16 years old if you were reading this. Since you would have been psychologically ready for what I am about to tell you, I ask Hiruzen to give it to you when you graduate. It is equivalent to being 16. I apologize sincerely. My name is Minato Namikaze, Yandaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato. The strongest of the 9 Biju attacked Konohagakure no Sato on October 10th, which is 12 years ago if you're a genin, or 16 years if you're not. Your texts have undoubtedly informed you that Kyuubi no Yoko was defeated, killed, and destroyed. I regret to inform you that this is not the case. A Biju cannot be killed by anyone, not even a Hokage. Only one man in history, the Raikudo Sennin, was able to achieve this strength, and he has been dead for more than 2 millennia. No, in order to eliminate the Biju, I had to do something else. I needed to use a seal, not just any seal, but a soul-damaging seal. The only reason I had to use you and this seal was to permanently seal off Kyuubi no Yoko. The answer to why I picked you is very straightforward. You are my son, and I could not bear to burden another family. You are the eldest of 3 children, my son. Your brother Arashi and sister Natsuki were born just minutes after you. You had to bear this burden, in my opinion, because you were the firstborn. All I can hope for is that your mother, siblings, and you have all been doing well. I am aware that you will initially be rejected by the villagers. However, I have no doubt that they will eventually recognize you as the hero you were destined to be. I'm sorry, son, but I've left you a few gifts before I die. The scrolls for the Hiraishin and the Rasengan, along with all of my notes for my jutsu theories, are contained in the first seal. I suggest that you only sign the Shinigami summoning scroll, which is contained in the second seal. Unless you have no other choice, do not call forth the Shinigami. You have every right to the third scroll, which contains a sizable quantity of cash and the keys to the Namikaze estate, as the clan heir. All of my sealing theories and finished seal networks are included in the fourth seal. I hope you can make use of these seals in a manner that I was unable to. However, the staff and sword of the Raikudo Sennin, which have been handed down through my family for the past 2 millennia, are found in the fifth and final seal. If you can use these items correctly, they will increase your strength and skill to levels above those of a Sannin. I know that my gifts will never be sufficient to make up for what I have done, my son. I will miss a lot of things in your life, and I humbly ask for your forgiveness because I will never be able to witness your first day at the academy, your transformation into a shinobi, or your love affair. From your father, Minato Namikaze. With love. Naruto read the letter so often that he was afraid his eyes would bleed from straining them too much. In his heart, he knew deep down that it was true. The Kyuubi no Yoko was sealed in his body, and his father was the one who did it. But what about his mother and siblings? What happened to them? He prayed, Kami, that it was a lie, a fake, a genjutsu. Naruto could take it no more. Tears welled up in his eyes as all of his suffering finally came to the surface. It was short-lived, though, as Naruto's eyes narrowed into hateful slits and glowed a dark color that resembled gazing into the abyss's maw. He gritted his teeth like nails on a chalkboard. He had no idea that there were 4 people in the field, and they were all shaking with terror as they watched the dark blue chakra thrash all over his body. After glancing up at the sky, Naruto yelled, "Damn you father, damn you Yondaime," loud enough to be heard throughout Konoha. Outside the walls of Konoha, just outside of Konoha's gates, a huge fissure appeared in the ground. Black slivers of shadow ripped from its maw as it shattered together, and in a burst of black light, a figure covered in darkness emerged, his steel eyes piercing the sky with a smile. The man stepped forward and dispersed in a flurry of shadows as it traveled to the forest, where his disciple awaited. "Oh, I can practically taste the darkness in him. Time for a visit to my new servant on earth. You bastard, because of you, I was tortured beyond recognition, I lost my innocence against my will, I was humiliated, brutalized, and it was all because of you," Naruto swore in his skull as he continued to stare at the letter in front of him. As Naruto roared to the heavens, "Why father, why did you have to condemn me to this hell? What did I do to deserve this, you bastard?" The chakra surrounding him appeared to darken and thrash even more. When Mizuki first heard Naruto say, "No," he was wide-eyed and said, "He couldn't possibly be Minato, Sama's son." Mizuki looked at Naruto more closely and wanted to slap himself in the face. "Almost exactly like the Yondaime," Naruto said. "Oh Kami. Sama, what have I done? Why didn't I help you sooner, Naruto? Please forgive me," Iruka said, looking at him with heartbreak. Hinata thought she might burst into tears. "Naruto-kun, is this you? I don't have much time. I have to stop him now," Tenku said, turning to face Naruto. The air seemed to obey her command as it started to twist into loops and ropes, creating chains of wind. Heaven's winds, Kami's realm, bind his rage and quell his anger. She placed her hands together in front of her chest. "Bind his darkness and protect him," she said, as the chains shot towards Naruto and started to wrap around him. As his chakra started to fade, Naruto thrashed where he stood, trying to break the chains. "No, curse all of you, damn you all to hell," he cried, but the chains wrapped around his entire body, and his eyes continued to burn with an unholy darkness that felt like he was staring into the deepest abyss. "Tenshipo, Tsubasa no Hyushi," Tenku exclaimed as she started to move her hands around, and her eyes started to glow with a pure aura. A white light burst from her body, blinding everyone. Looking at his hands, Mizuki had collapsed to the ground. "I tried to kill the son of the Yondaime," he said, staring into the glaring light. "I am the demon here." To shield his eyes from the light, Iruka covered them. As the light glowed with a brightness that would embarrass the sun, Hinata closed her eyes. The light gradually dimmed until Tenku's new limbs were the only source left. Iruka gazed in wonder at Tenku. Hinata felt as though she might pass out, and Mizuki prayed as though his life depended on it. With 2 white angelic wings and white feathers floating around her, Tenku stood in front of them. Her bust was now a little bigger than a D-cup, and her hair had grown to her hips. She had a more prominent figure, particularly in the back. And you were drawn in by the lovely, heavenly blue glow in her eyes. "Tenshipo, Amatsu Nomori," she said, holding out her hands to Naruto, while the feathers surrounding her appeared to float in his direction and encircle him in a soft tornado. As Naruto started to lose his balance, his eyes grew heavy, and he fell to the ground with his eyes closed. If Tenku hadn't come out of nowhere and lifted him in her arms, he would have struck it. When she noticed the drying tears on Naruto's face, she thought, "Kami. Sama, why didn't we help him? Yeah, I have some explaining to do, don't I?" Tenku sighed, turning to face the other 3 people in the field, who were now gaping at her in disbelief. Before heading to the Hokage Tower, the 3 gave each other a nod. 10 minutes later in the Hokage Tower, Tenku, Mizuki, Iruka, Hinata, and the unconscious Naruto sprawled across the office couch were the objects of attention for Hiruzen Sarutobi and Hishi Hyuga. Mizuki nodded his head in embarrassment as Hiruzen gave him a stern look and said, "Mizuki, you understand that with the crimes you committed, you will be sentenced to life in prison at best, but with your crimes you could very well be executed." Iruka turned to Mizuki and said, "I understand the consequences of my actions, Hokage. Sama, I will accept full responsibility for my actions." Mizuki turned away as he said, "Mizuki, why the sudden change of heart when you were intending to kill Naruto?" I admired the Yondaime. When I found out he was to have a child, I celebrated for days. I wanted to possibly become the child's teacher, bring him further into the shinobi world. He looked down. But, when we were told the Yondaime and his family had died, I immediately hated Naruto, ignoring the obvious signs in front of me that he was his child. Hiruzen put his pipe in his mouth as Hishi talked. Mizuki nodded his head and swallowed, So, the only reason you have a change of heart is because he is my friend's son? With a sigh, the Hyuga head turned to face Mizuki and said, Anbu, take him away. Two Anbu then cuffed Mizuki, who did not resist and was taken to Anbu headquarters. Now, we have many questions for you, Ms. Tenku. First off, what are you? Hiruzen said, glancing at Tenku. Hiashi's eyes widened as he gazed at Tenku. Tenku sat down and inhaled deeply. I am an angel, a race placed upon this earth by Kami so that in a way she would be able to communicate her blessing with the ninjan. There are a total of 5 other races, and we each have different abilities that we can give to the human offspring we bear or give should we ever decide to mate with a human. Tenku nodded her head as she went on. Abilities that you give to human offspring? Do you mean bloodlines? Yes, your bloodlines are actually byproducts of humans breeding with one of the 5 great races. If we hadn't, then the only bloodline in existence would be the original one given to the Raikudo Sennin by Kami. Sama and Shinigami. Sama. Iruka raised her voice, sighing as she crossed her legs and considered how to explain. Tenku, what are the 5 great races? Well, my race, the angels were sent here by Kami, Sama herself. She gave us the power of light and wind. A majority of us are females, with there usually being 110% male in the entire angel population. The next race is the Berserkers, servants of Jashin. They love to fight in battle, and are immortal in battle unless they are completely and utterly obliterated. A majority of the population is male, so it is not hard for them to procreate, but they are so hideous underneath their dark armor that if they want to continue their line, they either have to all share a Berserker female, which only number at 10% or less of their population, or kidnap and rape human females. Tenku seemed to shiver at the mention of such things. Okay, the next races are the Harvesters, servants of Shinigami, Sama. They exist to harvest and devour the souls of those Shinigami. Sama commands them to. If a person is close to death, a harvester will likely be nearby. Harvesters are mostly skeletal with their lower bodies being shadows. In history there have only been a few harvesters who have ever mated with a human. The next race is the Succubi and Incubi, servants of Yami, Sama. They live to have sex and breed. They do not usually produce bloodlines, as the resulting offspring usually end up with either the succubus or the incubus primary genes, and the last race, and probably the strongest of the 5, are the vampires. A single vampire is strong enough to kill a mid-level demon, and a high-class vampire is strong enough to challenge one of the Biju. The vampires are also very picky when it comes to mating, as they mate for life, otherwise they will not even look in the person's direction. There has only ever been a single bloodline produced by the vampire clan, and it has long since become extinct because of wars. And these vampires, who is their master? Hiruzen asked, glancing at Tenku, who appeared to tremble as she swallowed. Their master, and their creator, the lord of all who are consumed by darkness, is the eternal abyssal god. Hiruzen turned to face Tenku and was about to say something when he heard a moaning sound from his couch. They all turned to watch Naruto's eyes open. So, you don't know why people hate me, you don't know who my parents are, is there anything else you lied to me about, you fucking prick? Naruto snapped at the Sandaime after blinking multiple times as he adapted to the light. You need to show proper respect to Naruto, Iruka snapped, glaring at him. Iruka's eyes widened and he felt a slight clenching in his chest. Fuck you, Iruka, you are no better than he is. In fact, I might as well say you are worse, you damn hypocrite. Naruto had never spoken to him in such a way. I can't believe I stayed in this village for as long as I did. It was a waste of my life. Naruto snarled as he rolled off the couch and stood up, turning to face the door before Heishi interrupted. Before turning to face Heishi, Naruto grasped the door handle and asked, Naruto, where do you think you are going? I am leaving this fucking village. Hiruzen yelled at Naruto as he was ready to open the door. Isn't it obvious, you white-eyed shit? Naruto snarled at the Sandaime and smashed the doorknob in his hand, causing deep dents. Naruto, you can't leave, what about all your friends in? Hiruzen had to turn away as Naruto started crying, saying, I have had it with this fucking village. Not only do I find out that my father is Minato Namikaze, but I also find out why I am hated, that I have a mother and 2 siblings, and that you have lied to me for years. You must understand that if knowledge of your father had gotten out then, Naruto said, blondly glancing at Heishi. Naruto interrupted Heishi. Naruto started to walk away, but Hiruzen interrupted, saying, that bastard is no longer my father. Naruto glared at the Sandaime and said, as your Hokage I am ordering you to stay here now. You can't order around a civilian. Since I failed the graduation exam, I have every right to leave this fucking village. No. Naruto narrowed his eyes and let out a little key as he looked at the Hyuga head. You are a genin of Konoha by a vote from 3 noble clans. and the approval of the Hokage. Hiruzen took out a law book and turned through a few pages, asking, "What are you talking about?" According to laws set down by the Naidame, and finalized by a majority rule by the council, if an academy student has been found exceptional by 3 or more clan heads and has the approval of the Sandame, then that academy student shall be promoted to genin, regardless of any tests they may have failed at. What the fuck, are you fucking serious? You know what? Fuck you, fuck your laws, and fuck everyone in this village. I'm out of here. Heishi yelled as Naruto's eyes widened and his desire to kill doubled. Naruto grabbed the lamp on the desk next to the couch and threw it at the Hyuga's head, barely avoiding it. Naruto, if you leave this office then you will be labeled a nuke.nin, granted you will be captured and returned but, he said. Hiruzen moved in front of Naruto as he turned to go, saying, "Ask me if I fucking care." With a look of pure venom in his voice, Naruto addressed the Sandame and made his demands. "Naruto, what can I do to make you stay, please? Anything, I will do anything to make sure you stay here. What is it you want? I want to know everything, every secret you have kept from me, what happened to my mother and siblings, and if I so much as find one single lie coming from you, I am walking out of the village, and I am never coming back. Naruto, since you are now a genin, you are now officially the Namikaze head as such, you are given a seat on the council. Once you turned 16 you would have been given the seat regardless if you were a shinobi or not," Hiruzen said with a sigh. "I am too old for this shit." He then walked back to the desk and took the scroll that Naruto had taken from the Forbidden Scroll. "So, what about my mother and siblings?" Naruto asked, turning to face Hiruzen. The Sandame breathed deeply while massaging his temples. "Your mother abandoned you as soon as she discovered you were the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. She said that in 12 years she would come back with her children to kill you and free her son from the demon's control. I have not been able to find her, so I could not stop her from brainwashing your siblings to kill you." He went to the couch and sat down after Naruto looked down and asked, "So, my own mother wants me dead. Why am I not surprised?" Hiruzen took the scroll and approached Naruto, carefully setting it in his lap. "Naruto, I know it hurts. But I promise you, with your new position as clan head, your mother won't even be able to get near you." After examining the scroll, Naruto picked it up and considered everything he had learned, including the Kyuubi, his father, his family, and everything else. Before throwing the scroll into the fire, he went to the fireplace and looked it over. Hiruzen watched as the scroll burned, taking the Namikaze clan's legacy with it. "Naruto, what are you doing?" he asked. Heishi reached into the flames and extracted the scroll, but it was too late. The keys to the Namikaze household were the only seal that remained intact, but the Raikudo Sennin's tools, the last Hiraishin scroll in existence, and the Namikaze clan's entire legacy were completely destroyed. "Naruto, why did you do that? That was your legacy. Why would you throw it into the fire?" Looked Hiruzen incredulously at Naruto. Naruto kicked open the office door and yelled at him, "Because I don't want it. I will not take the Namikaze name. I will not take the council seat. I renounce my family in full." With a tone so frigid that it would have frozen hell, Naruto turned to face Heishi and asked, "Naruto, are you going to leave the village?" Naruto walked out of the office and into the lobby, saying, "I want all of you to leave me alone." "Well, are we just going to let him go?" Heishi asked, gesturing to Hiruzen, Hinata, and Tenku. "No we aren't, let's go." Hiruzen got up and left the office, with Heishi trailing closely behind. Naruto.kun, Hinata thought as she trailed behind her father. "I won't let you fall into darkness," Tenku said, trailing behind Hinata. In the meantime, after kicking open the door and leaving the cage tower, Naruto ran into someone and, without even looking to see who it was, growled and shoved them away, saying, "Get out of my way." Unaware that the woman he encountered was staring at him with disgust, Naruto continued on his way to his apartment. Beside her was a young girl with blonde hair. "Chan, is that him?" she asked. The boy next to the woman with the red hair nodded his head and said, "Yes, that's him." The other two nodded and started to follow him. "Then let's get him." The woman, Kushina Uzumaki, Namikaze, was thinking, "Soon Naruto, soon you can rest in peace." Naruto, after sprinting to his apartment, Naruto headed straight for the roof. He pondered everything he had learned today while sitting in the little shack atop the apartment complex. A demon had been sealed inside his body by his father's condemnation. After leaving him, his mother was teaching his own siblings how to murder him. And all because the day he was born, the village was attacked by the Kyuubi. He had not displayed any emotion since arriving here, but as the dark blue chakra thrashed all around him, his anger came back full force. "Why Kami? Why have I been forced to endure this hell? Why have you forsaken me?" he screamed to the sky as he stood up. I would do anything. Anything to be free of my burdens. Naruto clenched his fists and looked at the ground. As the chakra started to lessen its thrashing, he sat down again. Naruto was startled by what he saw when he heard a voice behind him and turned his head to ask, anything. Based on his physical appearance, the individual was male. The armor on his legs was dark blackish with red undertones. A crimson serration that radiated a red aura was at the end of each tendril that hung from his hips. Numerous red orbs that appeared to glow with dark rage were located directly on his hips and abdomen. He appeared to be able to withstand a full-on blow from the Sandame's staff because of the interlacing armor covering his chest. He had demonic armored plating of the same color on his shoulders, but he also had tendrils extending from his back and shoulders. His hair was the darkest blue and spiked in all directions. He had 2 horns that curved from the side of his head towards his shoulders. His skin was completely black, and his eyes were an unholy cyan. In this man's presence, Naruto felt as though he were being choked. His power was so great that it overshadowed any previous desire to kill. Below, Kushina, Arashi, and Natsuki had reached the front of the apartment with Hiruzen, Heishi, Hinata, and Tenku, and they were all shaking from the sense of the ominous aura. Hiruzen asked, "What is she doing here?" as he suddenly noticed Kushina. Before he could ask himself any more questions, the aura abruptly left him. When the group turned around, they saw Naruto standing in front of a creature that appeared to belong in nightmares. But Tenku was shaking even more than she had when she sensed the aura, saying, it can't be him." Looking at the man in front of him, Naruto was shaking and asking, "Who are you?" Naruto appeared to be put off by the man's question. "You said before that you would do anything to be free of your burdens. Do you mean it, or was that all hot air?" Nevertheless, he responded, "Yes, I would do anything." Putting a glowing palm on Naruto's navel, the man grinned and said, "Very well, I, the eternal abyssal god, shall free you from your burden." At this moment, the energy in his hand pushed its way into Naruto's stomach and started attacking the Kyuubi's seal, releasing the demonic Yuki. Everyone who sensed the Yuki poured from their homes, and their eyes widened in fear as they saw the crimson energy. "No?" Hiruzen watched as the crimson Yuki spilled out of the blonde and into the streets. "No. The demon released it. We should have killed it when we had the chance," said Kakashi, who was shaking with terror. As it started to form itself, the Yuki started to flail and spin around. The energy solidified as sparks and chakra traveled over the chakra, transforming it into flesh. The Kyuubi no Yoko was standing in the center of Konoha when the procedure was complete. Kyuubi was going to attack a building when the great Biju opened its eyes, looked around, and then chuckled as it started to drool. I knew that seal could not hold me for long. Now to finish what I started." The Biju's eyes widened at the sound of the voice, and it was filled with pure terror. "Is that so?" it asked. The Kyuubi slowly turned its head and prayed to Yami that it wasn't who it believed it to be. "No, it can't be." However, it appeared that Yami was not paying attention because the eternal abyssal god was standing a few meters away from him, his host panting on the ground and holding onto his burned abdomen. Kyuubi started to retreat, but the abyssal god abruptly lifted his arm and gestured toward an area above the cage tower while a reddish, black force encircled his arm. His power was directed in the direction of the region directly above the Hokage monument. Everyone in the audience was shaking, wondering what would happen. However, Kushina, Arashi, and Natsuki were feeling depressed as they stared at Naruto. He wasn't actually Kyuubi. "What have I done, Kami? Sama?" Kushina pondered in her mind. "What have we done?" Arashi and Natsuki felt like crying as they gazed at their brother. Boom! Suddenly, everyone who hadn't already been watching the black orb turned to face the location where the explosion had occurred. They saw a huge black cloud hovering over the Hokage tower. The cloud started to change and evolve until it started to solidify. The cloud had become a whirling whirlpool. No, no, no. Kyuubi's eyes widened in horror as it saw this, and it turned around and ran toward the forest, hoping to escape the vortex. However, the abyssal god merely laughed and said, "It's pointless, Kyuubi, you're mine now." The vortex accelerated as a powerful wind ripped through the atmosphere surrounding the village. Kyuubi nearly reached the gate before it stumbled and fell, scattering debris all around. It opened its eyes and started to run again, but then it felt a tremendous pull. "No," it said, digging its claws into the ground as the vortex started to draw the demon lord in its direction. As the Kyuubi started to try to grab hold of anything it could possibly grasp, everyone watched in horror and shock. They begged and pleaded. "No, not at all. Just that. Please, Yami. Sama, assist me." After being lifted off the ground and dragged through the air toward the vortex, Kyuubi made a last ditch attempt to save itself by clinging to the Hokage tower. As its claws started to slip, Kyuubi turned its head in the direction of the abyssal god and pleaded, "Please, don't send me there, I will do anything for you. I will be returned to the seal. Please, 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 let me live." As it was dragged toward the vortex, its claws were severed from the Hokage tower. Kyuubi attempted to prevent himself from entering by grabbing the distortion in the air. "Now, didn't I tell you? You're mine now." The abyssal god merely laughed, and then he snapped his fingers, causing the vortex to spin faster and faster. As its flesh started to separate from its body, Kyuubi let out a painful scream. As its flesh and skin were ripped away, exposing its bones, Kyuubi watched. As all of the flesh on his head was ripped away and sucked into the vortex, he let out one final, guttural roar of agony. After that, there was only silence. When Kyuubi's head and front legs hit the ground, the vortex closed, leaving behind enormous dust clouds. At last, the Kyuubi was dead. The abyssal god turned to Naruto and grunted in satisfaction, saying, "Now, as for my payment for taking away your burden." Naruto gazed at his charred body. The Kyuubi had vanished, and he would never have to face it again. However, he didn't want that. "No," Naruto gasped, the pain still present. Startled by the abrupt speech, he turned to face the blonde and asked, "What?" Pushing himself up, Naruto moaned in agony, "You didn't remove all of my burdens." "Really?" the abyssal god said, raising an eyebrow and stroking his chin. "What does prayer reveal about your ultimate burden?" With a dark expression on his face, Naruto turned to face the abyssal god and said, "My blood, and all physical relations to my family." "Ha ha 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 ha. Is that correct?" The abyssal god circled Naruto and gave him a very close, up look. "Yes, it is so," Naruto said, turning to face the Lord of the Abyss. "And if I were to do this," he said, laughing as he surveyed the city, "what would you give me in return?" The abyssal god turned to face Naruto and gazed into his eyes. Raising his head to gaze at the abyssal god, Naruto inhaled deeply. Everyone, including Tenku, tried to stop him, but his next statement, delivered with such icy conviction in such a lifeless voice, paralyzed them. Naruto dropped to one knee and bowed his head, saying, "My soul, and my eternal loyalty, to you, and only you." "Very well then, an acceptable price, now hold still." The abyssal god grinned at this declaration. He then charged dark energy into his hand and reached for his belt, saying, "Because this is going to hurt," as he was ready to seize one of the red orbs. He snapped his head and saw Tenku fly in her actual form towards them. "No." As she started to chant, "I will not let you fall into darkness again," she turned to face Naruto. The wind turned into chains as she spoke, "Heaven's winds, Kami's realm, bind his rage and quell his anger. Bind his darkness and protect him," she chanted, and as Naruto's dark blue chakra erupted from his body, the chains shot towards him. As he was about to stop it, the abyssal god thought, "Let's see if he is worthy of my gift." He turned to face Naruto and said, "Well, young one, show me your resolve to be freed of your burden." "No, I will not be denied my freedom," Naruto said as he watched the feathers float around him. "Tenshipo. Amatsu Namori," Tenku said, raising her arm as the feathers started to whirl around him. "Get away." Naruto's dark blue chakra exploded from his body, destroying the feathers and dissolving the chains, but each time his eyes opened, a dark abyss was revealed. The sudden burst of chakra knocked everyone back 6 or 7 feet, while Tenku was flung back into the streets. Looking at them, Naruto said, "Don't bother me," in a deadpan voice. "No, Naruto, don't listen to him. Think about what you're doing. You're going to make the biggest mistake of your life," Tenku yelled as she looked up at Naruto. As Naruto kept walking away, her cries became louder. "Please, don't give in to him, I beg you." As Naruto knelt before the dark god, her cries were ignored. "You may begin anytime, master." Tenku collapsed and started crying, saying, "I failed." Natsuki, Arashi, and Kushina forced themselves to stand and attempted to run in their direction, but their ability to move was hindered by the abrupt shock to their bodies. "Good, but first," smirking, the abyssal god drew out a long blade and swung it down, severing Naruto's arm at the elbow. As his arm flopped across the floor like a marionette, Naruto let out a painful scream. "My arm." The abyssal god placed an orb on Naruto's chest after grabbing it from his belt. He thrust the red sphere through his body and into his heart, saying, "Forget the old one. Here's a new one." Naruto's clothes caught fire, his flesh started to crack and rot away, and his eyes glowed an unholy cyan as a dark energy glowed out of his mouth. Boom! Made the air around him condense instantly and sent a shockwave through the air. "Free from my son." When the Abyssal God looked back, he saw Kushina standing on the edge of the building, glaring at him angrily. "Your son?" His tone was clearly humorous as he asked. "Yes, my son." As he gestured toward her, the Abyssal God merely laughed. The air around Naruto stopped spinning as he said, "You forsook him 12 years ago. You have spent the last 12 years training your offspring to be his executioner. You lost the right to call him your son long ago." His eyes were glowing the deepest unholy cyan, and his mouth glowed as well. Naruto's flesh was so cracked that it might as well have been glass. And now, the skin cracked. "Your son." The Abyssal God's twisted smirk transformed into a maniacal grin, and Naruto's eyes and mouth glowed brighter, as mine. As the skies grew darker, Naruto let out a final scream, and the remnants of his skin scattered throughout the village as a tremendous surge of evil energy swept through it. As the dusty cloud started to lift, the Abyssal God raised his hand and signaled for Naruto to approach him. "Now rise, and walk, Naruto." Naruto got to his feet as the cloud dissipated entirely, revealing a man who was entirely different from what he had been before. He had a sickly gray skin, crimson-black nails on his left arm, crimson-black toenails, and a muscular structure so dense that it appeared as though his body had been carved out of stone. The unholy cyan of his eyes appeared to be portals into the abyss itself. He had crimson-black streaks in his pure silver hair. He had notably sharper teeth. However, his right arm was the most horrifying feature. On the back of Naruto's forearm was a black orb with a slit running through it, but it opened abruptly to reveal a purple slitted eye with 4 pentagrams surrounding the pupil. His right arm had grown back, but not in the same way. It was now covered in black armor similar to what the Abyssal God wore, but a long vein, like crack, ran through it and became Naruto's clawed hand. The vein was crimson and blood-red. Naruto examined his new form and noticed his changes. As he approached Naruto, the Abyssal God grinned and asked, "So, how do you like your new form?" Naruto continued to examine himself and discovered that the only clothing he had left was a pair of frayed pants that hardly covered his body. "Ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha. MWAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHll Thank you, my lord," he said, turning to face the Abyssal God. Naruto stood up and turned to face Konoha. Then, in a voice that made everyone shudder, he yelled, "Hear me, Konoha. I was Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze at birth. Your precious Yondaime condemned me to be the Kyuubi's prison. No more." As he shouted to the sky, "I am Shinin no Naruto, servant of the Abyssal God. MWAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHAHMitsuki, Arashi, and Kushina were standing aside, trembling in terror. Shock had caused Hinata to faint. The air around Hiruzen was filled with self-loathing as he stood off to the side, looking down. Heishi was asking Minato to pardon him for not being able to provide for his son. Tenku had collapsed in a heap on the ground, saying, "Kami-sama, please pardon me for my failure." The eternal Abyssal God's servant, Naruto, now surveyed the village. A week had passed since his ascension, and a lot had changed. He felt sickened by the love, respect, and awe he encountered everywhere he went. He slapped away every girl who asked him out, punched the face of every store owner who gave him free stuff, and gave madness to everyone who had ever wronged him and begged for forgiveness. He grinned sadistically as he looked at the eye on his arm, saying, "This arm is so much fun." He then glanced at his clock and grinned, saying, "Well, it's time to head to the academy." He grabbed his poncho, which was all he had for clothing, and then a vortex appeared in the center of his room. A small, shivering man in a lot of leather clothing emerged and bowed before Naruto. "Naruto. Sama, I come bearing gifts," he said to the portal as a rack was drawn in. When the item he had been anticipating finally arrived, Naruto grinned with delight. It was a stunning piece of armor with a demonic aura that Naruto found incredibly delicious. The left arm and shoulder piece were heavy and exquisitely engraved. Naruto could move the 3 long talons on the left hand with a little chakra. The remainder of the arm, however, was covered in thick, spiky plating with exquisite engravings. There were 2 spikes on his shoulders and a piece of armor on his back. Naruto could perform a variety of stunts by pushing his chakra through the 4 tubes on his back. In addition, he wore a tiny headdress that curved across his forehead. In addition to being stunning, the armor was intimidating because it absorbed all surrounding light. The best part is that it was created using Kyuubi no Yoko's bones. "Perfect. Tell you master that I am most pleased with the results," Naruto said with a smile as he traced the armor. "Oh, and minion," the short man said, nodding his head before turning to go. Tell your master that he had better get the objects I ask for on the day he says they will be done, not a second later. As Naruto started donning the armor, the man with the words, "Of course, sire," leapt into the portal. Well, it's definitely better than that damned poncho. After 10 minutes, when Naruto leapt from the roof and landed in the middle of the street, the crowd immediately dispersed and started staring at him in utter terror. Naruto simply laughed at this, saying, "Fools. They don't even know what the word fear means." Naruto then turned to face the academy, revealing himself in the shadows that always hung over him. A gloomy, menacing cloud has hovered over him ever since he acquired his new power. After inhaling deeply and savoring the scent of fear, Naruto turned to the academy to gather his team for the genin assignments, not that a god's servant needed one. Jonin meeting in Cage Tower. Hiruzen had anticipated that everything would go according to plan, that each person would be assigned to a team, that they would train, and that they would be able to pass, but when was war that easy? 4 of them immediately wanted Naruto on their team when he asked who they wanted on their team. They were Kushina Uzumaki, Namikaze, Asuma Sarutobi, Kurenai Yuhi, and Kakashi Hitaki. The council's situation was also deteriorating after they learned that Naruto was the Yondaime's son. Since more than half of them had repeatedly called for Naruto's death, Sarutobi was greatly irritated by their demands that he be placed on the same squad as their kids. The agreement between Hiruzen and Heishi to have Naruto and Hinata on the same squad was thwarted by this. The 4 of them instantly stopped arguing and turned to face Hiruzen after he could take no more of the shouting. "Now look," he said, "I am going to give each of you a chance to tell me what your team plans are, and why you believe they would work properly. Kurenai, you go first." Sandame. "Sama. I wish to take Naruto Uzu," the Genjutsu mistress said, but Hiruzen interrupted her. "It's Shinin no Naruto now, right? I wish to take Shinin no Naruto, Hinata Hyuga, and Kiba Inuzuka as my genin squad. I believe that with Naruto's innate infiltration skills combined with Hinata's long-range sight and Kiba's excellent senses, we could become a fine tracking team." "I will consider it. Now, Asuma, if you would explain your team and reasons," Hiruzen said, letting out a sigh and massaging his temples. Asuma raised his hand to smoke. "I wish to take Shinin no Naruto, Shoji Akamichi, and Ino Yamanaka as my squad. My reasons are because Naruto can think of plans on the fly and can coordinate Ino and Shoji to take down their opponents if they are trained properly." Sighing, Hiruzen said, "All right, Kushina, your turn." This was not progressing. Kushina came forward and said, "I wish to take my sons and daughter as my students. My reasons for this is because I can properly teach the 3 of them in some of our family's techniques, and I need to make up for abandoning him because of my stupidity." Hiruzen thought that using a spiked mace to strike himself in the head would be a better way to deal with his current headache. "Very well, and lastly, Kakashi." The Cyclops came forward and said, "I wish to take Shinin no Naruto, Sasuke Uchiha, and Sakura Haruno as my genin squad. My reasons for this are simple. Naruto seems to be more close combat and assault. Sakura is more long-range and tactical. And Sasuke is mid-range and more appropriate towards a mixture between the two. This could prove to create an excellent assassination squad in the future." He moaned and slapped his forehead, saying, "I need Vicodin, a lot of Vicodin, now. My choice is," he said, glancing at them, "Naruto." Everyone in the room was silenced when Naruto kicked open the academy doors. Upon examining it, he noticed that a large number of them were turning away, suggesting that his message had been understood. When he smelled the slight scent of a dog approaching them, he went to take his usual seat. He turned to see Hinata sitting by herself. Naruto glanced between his normal seat and the one that would most likely turn into a battlefield in a short while. He shrugged his shoulders, moved to the seat, and took a seat. When Hinata noticed Naruto sitting next to her, she blushed and uncomfortably moved in her seat. "Oh my god," she said, "Naruto-kun is sitting next to me." On the opposite side of the room, Tenku was examining Naruto while reflecting on the words the Abyssal God had spoken to her the previous evening. Rewind. Naruto had gone to sleep when Tenku approached the Abyssal God. She was going to use this time to talk to the Abyssal God, and he had stopped by to see how his new servant was doing. Abyss.ss.al God. "Sama," she said, taking a deep breath, and he turned to face Tenku. He gave her a chilling look and asked, "Yes, what is it, Tenku?" A demonic hand interrupted her as the Abyssal God went on to ask, Why did you? You want to know why I chose Naruto as my servant? The answer is simple," he said to Tenku. "But first, did you know that before I claimed him as my servant, he was the responsibility of every other god?" What do you mean, responsibility?" The Lord of the Abyss looked at her and snorted. Naruto's original families, the Namikaze and the Uzumaki, are chosen clans of Kami, Sama and Yami. Sama. Tenku's eyes widened as the abyssal god walked around her. It was the Shinigami that sealed Kyuubi inside of Naruto. She looked down as she contemplated what he said, and Jashin is responsible for all who suffer in violence. Yet all of my brethren, no matter how much Naruto suffered, they never raised a finger to help him. When I finally saw the chance to make him my responsibility, I took it without a second thought. He gripped Tenku's chin and made her look into his eyes. Naruto wanted to be free. I freed him of the ones who ignored their responsibility. I took away his burden of the Kyuubi. I took away his heritage. I took away his suffering. The abyssal god gripped her chin. The reason I made him my servant was because he asked me to. Nothing more, nothing less. The angel was left to her thoughts as the abyssal god dispersed in a shower of darkness. Final flashback. Ever since, she had been wondering why she was here on this plane of existence and what her purpose was, and she was not happy with the answers. Kiba Inuzuka entered with the door slammed open, his face covered in scratches. "What are you doing here, Dobi? And why are you sitting next to my Hinata? Chan?" he asked, stopping his attempt to sit next to Hinata as soon as he noticed Naruto. With an eyebrow raised, Naruto turned to face Kiba and said, "Didn't I tell you this a week ago? Hinata is nobody's property, and the reason I am here is because I passed dumb shit, or did you not hear? Mizuki has been rigging my tests for years, so technically, I never fail." Kiba returned his fist and punched Naruto. "Is that the best you got, Mutt? If that's the case, then I guess I won't have to put you down anytime soon, now will I?" Naruto asked, grasping Kiba's fist in his left hand and throwing the Inuzuka back, all the way across the room. A few spider web cracks were left in the wall after Kiba crashed into it. He pushed himself up and hobbled to an empty chair, thinking, "I am going to get you one of these days. You will pay for what happened to my father." "So Hinata. Chan, how are ya doing?" Naruto asked with a dark laugh before turning to face Hinata, who blushed at the sight of Naruto. With a smile, Naruto said, I'm F. Fine and Naruto.kun. "That's good. I hope that our teams are good. I certainly hope I don't get stuck on the same team as Sasuke or Sakura, and certainly not Kiba." "Alright class, as I am sure you heard, Naruto's tests were all rigged, so he has been set up on a team as a last minute," Iruka said as the doors opened and she was revealed. The two had been talking for a while when a certain pink-haired banshee interrupted. Iruka was about to reprimand the girl when a sinister aura filled the room. Why should it matter? Naruto doesn't have the skills to be a shinobi. Mizuki Sensei did the right thing by rigging his tests. Everyone looked to Naruto, who was now beaming maniacally, and asked, "Is that so, Sakura? I don't have the skills to be a shinobi. That is a riot coming from a girl who only passed the academy because of academics. Why, I bet I could take down you with only a single finger." Naruto smiled at Sakura, who spoke up brazenly. "Please, a dead last loser like you wouldn't even be capable of beating me with both fists, much less one finger." Pretty big words coming from the fangirl of Sass.Gay. Naruto smiled at the pink-haired banshee. Sakura screamed and ran at him, her fist curled up. She swung it at him, and he quickly stopped her punch with his finger. When Sakura saw that Naruto had stopped her punch, her eyes widened. "I'll talk," he said, flicking his finger back in a flicking motion. "No walk." He flicked her fist, and a loud crack reverberated throughout the room. Sakura sobbed as she gazed at her fist, which had her index, middle, and ring fingers snapped toward her wrist. Iruka turned to face Naruto, saying, "Naruto, that was uncalled for." Naruto gave Iruka a chilly look, which caused the Chunin to wince. "And her attacking me without provocation was? Gee, it seems you are no different than the idiotic civilians, Iruka." Iruka turned away from Naruto and said, "All right, now I'll start calling out the teams. Team 1 is Tenku, Arashi Uzumaki, Namikaze, and Natsuki Uzumaki." Namikaze. The two siblings complained that they weren't put on their Aniki's team, while Tenku just appeared uneasy. The remainder of the team assignments were ignored by Naruto. Naruto looked up and waited for his teammates, Sakura Haruno. When he heard the next name, and Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto's eyes widened. Team 7 will be comprised of Shinin no Naruto. It was completely pitiful to hear the fangirls moaning about how they deserved to be on Sasuke-kun's team throughout the class. With his crimson claws digging deep holes in the desk, Naruto said, "Kakashi Hatake will be your teacher." Hinata turned to face Naruto, who swore, "Gomen, and Naruto, K.kun." As Iruka called out her name, Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata turned to the board and said, "Team 8 will be made up of Hinata Hyuga." "Woohoo, awesome, I got Hinata. Chan baby, woo. Kiba was such a freaking pervert, and Hinata didn't feel safe around him at all. Especially after he'd tried to push himself on her 3 times already. Hinata looked down, not wanting to be on his team. And Shino Aburame. Hinata sighed. Shino had frequently assisted her with Kiba. To Ino's dismay, Iruka proceeded with the team assignments, placing Ino, Choji, and Shikamaru on the same team. When he was done, he turned to face the group in front of him and asked, "Any questions?" Naruto held up his hand, but before Iruka could call on him, he slammed it against the table. "Yeah, I got a few, one of the being, whose idea was it to stick Kiba and Hinata on the same team, when everyone knows how often Kiba tries to force himself on Hinata, and why the fuck am I on the same team as a spineless banshee and Uchiha with a god complex?" Naruto abruptly raised his right index finger. "No scratch that, why am I on a team with Uchiha? 'Cause all of those bastards have a fucking god complex." Naruto rose from his seat and made his way to the door after Iruka gave him a severe glare and said, "Naruto, these teams were picked out by the Hokage himself. If you have a problem with them, go speak to him." Gladly, Naruto exploded in a cloud of shadows after kicking open the door. "What the hell am I going to do with him?" Iruka moaned as he sat in his chair. The office of Sandaime. While reviewing the team assignments, Hiruzen Sarutobi made the decision to assign Naruto to a team with Sakura and Sasuke, with Kakashi serving as their sensei. With the exception of Kushina, Kakashi was the strongest jonin in the village. However, pairing her with Naruto would only invite a full-scale conflict. Hiruzen let out a sigh as he considered everything that had transpired, including the fact that Naruto had received over 20 marriage proposals in the previous week and that every single family had attempted Naruto's murder at some point. Hiruzen was on the verge of vetoing a civilian council member's marriage proposal to his niece. Boom! When the door to his office was blown off its hinges. As the flying fragment of wood flew through his window, Hiruzen ducked to see who had kicked in the door. He saw a furious Naruto in a very unusual suit of armor. "Not only did you lie to me my entire life, and hide away a secret that I had the right to know, but you also decided to put me on a team with 2 of the 3 people in the academy who I would love nothing more than to use my arm's new powers on," Naruto said, flexing his claws and glaring at the Sandaime. He also released a dark blue chakra aura as he started to approach the Sandaime. Hiruzen winced because he had witnessed the effects of Naruto's arm and knew that everyone who had been impacted by it had never been the same. The old man shuddered in his seat as Naruto sneered at the Sandaime and said, "What's worse, is that you decided to set me up with the Yondaime's student. Are you fucking stupid?" At the mention of the Sannin, Naruto appeared to release more killing intent. "Naruto, you must understand that the teams needed to be balanced, and putting you 3 together with Kakashi as your Jonin instructor would create a very powerful squad that could eventually become the next Sannin." Naruto put his right hand on the desk, which was glowing crimson, and said, "As if I would want my lord's power to be compared to a perverted toad sage, a drunken hag who can't face reality, and a pedophile with a god complex," he said. "I will deal with the teams, Sandaime.san, but mark my words, when the test is over, that team will be disbanded." Naruto released the desk, showed that his claws had burnt finger marks into the wood, and left the room. "I really need some Vicodin," Hiruzen said, collapsing into his chair and slapping his forehead. Academy. Later when lunch was over, Naruto relaxed in his chair. He was not so naive as to think that completing the academy automatically made you a shinobi. He knew they would need to take another test given by their Jonin instructor, so he waited for his sensei to arrive so he could finish the damn test. His eyes snapped open as he pointed his left hand at his left, its claws outstretched, just as he was about to fall asleep. He turned to see his siblings, Arashi and Natsuki, standing beside him. "What do you want?" Naruto growled, sneering at them. Naruto, I was wondering if perhaps you would like to go to Ichiraku's with us later today?" Natsuki first spoke, Aniki, and would have gone on if Naruto hadn't slashed his left arm's claws into the desk, shredding it into multiple pieces. She swallowed what she was about to say and spoke again. As Arashi said, "Yeah, our treat." Naruto turned to face them, and the 2 grinned at their ex-brother. Naruto snorted as he turned his back, "As if I would spend my time with 2 people who had spent 12 years of their life training for the sole purpose of ending my own, especially in a place where they could easily poison my food." Naruto stared at them with his demonic cyan eyes. "Your mother threw away both of your chances to associate with me 12 years ago, and you both destroyed any possible chance to call me an acquaintance when you agreed to train to end my life. So if you 2 want to hang out with someone, hang out with your teammates, or the rest of the academy weaklings. I will not tolerate either of you." Unaware that a particular angel had overheard his entire conversation, Naruto turned away from them. Is that really how he feels about his family? He asked. She looked down, attempting to solve the mystery of the blonde. A red-haired woman wearing Enbu clothing with a katana on her back was suddenly visible when the door opened. Her name was Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, and she had green eyes. She glanced around the room, and her gaze briefly fell on Naruto. She walked over and leaned down to greet him, saying, "Hello Sochi, I." Naruto gave Kushina a stern look as he flexed his claws, cutting her off. She backed up after swallowing her words. Natsuki, Arashi, and Tenku followed her out of the room as she turned to face the class and said, "Team 1, with me," before turning to the door. "How painful was your life?" Tenku asked Naruto, who was ogling his new armor, before she left the room. She let out a sigh and trailed behind her group. After setting his feet on the table and saying, "Time for a little nap," he closed his eyes and allowed himself to drift off to sleep. The doors reopened a few minutes later, revealing 3 Jonin. One had red eyes and long curly black hair. She was dressed in what appeared to be first aid kit attire. With a cigarette in his mouth and the emblem of the 12 ninja guardians around his waist, the other was dressed in traditional Jonin garb. The final one wore a mask over his face, had hair that defied gravity, and was dressed in typical Jonin garb. The woman with the dark hair yelled, "Team 8 with me." With a sigh, Hinata approached the woman, Kiba following closely behind. However, Shino intervened swiftly to keep the hormonally unstable mongrel away from Hinata. The man with the cigarette called out, "Team 10 with me," and Ino, Shoji, and Shikamaru approached and followed him outside. Before he could finish, Naruto vanished in a black cloud. 5 minutes, he muttered, slapping his face. "This is going to be a long day." The white-haired masked man grinned. "All right, Team 7, meet me on the rooftop in." Meeting of Team 7. Naruto was staring at Konoha when Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura arrived on the roof. The entire village was shrouded in a dark shadow because the menacing cloud had remained since Naruto's ascension. Naruto sat on a ledge and waited for the other 3 to join him. The Abyss servant turned to face everyone and said, "Well, let's get started." Kakashi was coughing as he spoke. "All right, tell me about yourselves. I will start. My name is Kakashi Hitaki. I like a lot of things, never really thought about what I hate, and I have lots of hobbies." Naruto let out a sigh, not really giving a damn. "My name is Sakura Haruno, I like," she said, blushing as she looked at Sasuke. "I hate," she said, giving Naruto a quick glance before shivering. "Ino.pig, and my hobbies," she said, blushing and giggling as she looked at Sasuke. In disgust, Naruto snorted, "Pitiful ninja." Then came Sasuke. "My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I have no likes, and a lot of dislikes, no real hobbies, and my dream is to kill a certain man." Naruto raised his eyebrows and said, "My name is Shinin no Naruto. My likes are women, food, and training to better serve my lord. My hobbies include coming up with various methods I can destroy my enemies, and my dream is to fulfill my lord's greatest desire." The way Naruto introduced himself, saying, "Alrighty then, I want all of you to meet me at Training Ground 7 tomorrow, and don't eat breakfast," made everyone look a little uneasy. "Eat breakfast, or I kill you," Naruto said, turning to face his teammates after Kakashi vanished in a puff of smoke. He then somersaulted over the edge of the wall and leapt to the street below, starting to walk towards the village without really caring where he was going. Meeting of Team 1. Arashi, Natsuki, and Tenku took seats in front of Kushina, who had taken a seat in the center of the park. Kushina glanced at them. "All right, for Tenku's sake, since I already know the 2 of you, I would like you all to introduce yourself. I'll go first. My name is Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. I like ramen, my children, and my deceased husband. I despise the Kyuubi no Yoko, and am glad that Demon is dead, and I also hate all those who hurt my son. My goal in life is to get my son back so that we can be a family again." Tenku turned to face Kushina and said, "What the hell? Is she crazy? How does she hope to win him back after spending the last 12 years training to kill him?" Then came Arashi. "My name is Arashi Uzumaki Namikaze. I like weapons, my family, and my Aniki. I dislike everyone that has ever hurt my Aniki, and the Kyuubi no Yoko. My goal is to get Aniki back in our family." Natsuki got to his feet, and Tenku turned away. "My name is Natsuki Uzumaki Namikaze. I like ramen, elemental manipulation, my family, and especially my Aniki. I hate everyone that has ever hurt my Aniki. My dream is the same as my brother's." "My name is Tenku, I like," she said, turning to face everyone. "My likes are none of your business, my dislikes. Well, I can honestly say I dislike evil people, and a good majority of my family, for reasons I won't divulge." And as for my dreams, sigh, I honestly don't know anymore, she said, appearing to blush and look down. All right, then. I want you all to come here tomorrow at noon. We will give the final test then, Kushina said with a smile as she turned to face her team. Tenku stood up and left the three of them alone. All right, Kushina said, turning to her kids, tonight we make our move. Yep, soon Iniki will be back in our family. The three smiled and went home, eager to get ready for the evening. That evening Naruto was strolling around the village's periphery. He particularly enjoyed this spot, so silent, so terrified. Residents of the village's outskirts were constantly terrified that another Kyuubi would occur and they would be the first to die, but they never had enough money to relocate to the larger cities. As he turned his head slowly, Naruto said, I am sure that you know that spying on a fellow can be considered treason. Kushina Uzumaki. Namikaze. Naruto was about to turn down an alley. Now, tell me what you three are doing here. I have little time for humans. My lord needs his offering, Naruto said, turning around as Kushina, Arashi, and Natsuki suddenly materialized behind him. Naruto, please, we are so sorry, please, come back, we can be a family again. Kushina stepped forward, and Naruto gave her a perplexed look. We were a family? When? Was it when you told your husband that you were pregnant with 3 little brats, or was it when we were brought into this world, or perhaps, it was moments before you swore to kill me? So many possibilities. Naruto tapped his chin while in a pose of thought. God damn it, please forgive us. Had we known you weren't possessed by Kyuubi we... Arashi said as he moved forward. Naruto shook his head at his former Oto and spoke in a disgusted tone. And what, pray tell, gave any of you the impression I was possessed by Kyuubi in the first place? Kushina tilted her head. When you developed those whisker marks, I thought that the Kyuubi had taken over your body. His voice was mocking. Oh, so a kunoichi, who hasn't the slightest knowledge of seals, demons, or any kind of field that would give you authority to say if I was possessed or not, determined that I was a demon, because I developed whisker marks. Well done. You truly must be genius if you are capable of such a feat. Perhaps that means that every other Jinchuriki is in fact a demon, and that every village has a demon willingly obeying their every will. Truly astounding, you idiotic whore. Kushina looked at Naruto with disdain, a twisted grin. Do you honestly think the Yondaime would use his spawn to contain a demon, if he had not prepared countermeasures to assure I was not harmed by the beast? Kushina looked down, feeling even more depressed than she already was, and she was already feeling pretty depressed. Natsuki yelled, Iniki, please, come back home, we can be a family, you can be happy. Why would I need to go with you three to be happy, when I already am happy as I am? Asked Naruto, grinning and shrugging his shoulders. Naruto walked away from them after turning around. Very well, you leave us no choice, Kushina said, raising her head and speaking emotionlessly. She then pulled out a chain and swung it, wrapping it around the blonde. The chain caught Naruto off guard, preventing him from launching a counterattack. What the hell? He asked. Leaping in front of him, Natsuki seized his temples. Natsuki was about to charge chakra into her fingers when the chains broke, sending metal shards everywhere, including her stomach. Hhhh, but before she hit the ground, Naruto grabbed her by the throat and slammed the back of her head into a wall. We are going to wipe away your hurtful memories, and any memories that involve us. We will then build you back up as our brother. Before Arashi could react, Naruto grabbed his arm and snapped it backwards before kicking the redhead in the jaw, breaking it and knocking him out in the process. Naruto dropped Natsuki and disappeared, then reappeared in front of Arashi. Sochi, please, I'm your mother. Naruto scoffed and raised his right arm, opening the eye on his forearm as he turned to face Kushina, who was shaking in terror. Kushina froze in place as she heard a sinister whisper in her head, and that reason, that I have a very special punishment for you, my dear Ka-chan. Naruto threw his arm up in front of his face, exposing the eye on his arm. Boshi no Shinin, Akumu. You will now understand what fear really means. Kushina screamed, hhhhhhhhhh, as she started to convulse and spasm on the ground, her mouth foaming from the eye's effects. Worthless whore, although, I am surprised you managed to keep part of your mind from that, maybe I should have done a month. Naruto sneered at the notion. Nah, you probably wouldn't last the second week, hhhhhhhh, and walked away, leaving the three of his former family members in the street while Enbu arrived to look into the screams. The following day after arriving at the training field, Naruto started practicing his new arm skills. He flicked one of the targets with his index finger, causing it to split in half in the middle. Truly astounding, Naruto smiled, amazed at his new arm. Indeed it is. Naruto jerked around as the abyssal god emerged from a tree's shadow. With a quick drop to one knee, Naruto said, "My lord." The abyssal god laughed and waved his hand, asking, "What is it you command of me, your grace?" Naruto stood with his head bent, asking, "Can't a god come to see his chosen servant?" "I beg your pardon, my lord," Naruto said, but the abyssal god silenced him. Naruto straightened up and folded his arm across his chest, saying, "That is enough. Shinin no Naruto. I have come here for important reasons." The abyssal god turned to face Naruto and asked, "What is it you command of me, my lord?" The abyssal god reached into his pocket and took out a small black orb, saying, "A gift, to amplify your power. Simply place it in your arm's eye, and when you are in your most dire need, use it, but use it carefully." The abyssal god disappeared in a flurry of shadows as Naruto stared at the orb in his hand. "Naruto, as my servant on earth, I will task you to capture a certain amount of souls. Of course, there are certain souls I wish taken. I'll follow your instructions, your grace." Naruto put the orb over his Boshi no Shinin and let the eye engulf it. Before he knew it, his skin had warped itself and he felt his body clench and convulse. Naruto wanted to scream in agony, but he refrained from doing so because he believed it would be a disgrace to his god. When the pain eventually stopped, Naruto got to his feet and flexed his hand. As he looked over his armor, he sensed a tremendous power within it, as if it were calling to him. However, if his god's words were accurate, he shouldn't follow its will just yet. After several hours, Sasuke and Sakura eventually arrived, but they avoided Naruto because they were aware of his potential for danger. To everyone's great surprise, Kakashi arrived on schedule. This test is to see if you can get a bell. There are only 2 bells. If you get one, you become a genin, if not, you head back to the academy. Kakashi removed 2 bells and placed them on his belt. "Go at me with the intent to kill." Naruto smiled as his demonic cyan eyes glowed even brighter and his right arm lit up with blue chakra. Gladly, Naruto vanished in a burst of black light. "Hey Kakashi!" everyone exclaimed, unable to move at all. Naruto was in the air, his right arm glowing with a huge dark blue aura. "Try this on for size, Shinin Taihao." The energy surrounding his arm blasted at the 3. As the blue bolt struck the ground, Kakashi's eyes widened at the strike's sheer power. "Shit!" he exclaimed, running to seize Sakura and Sasuke before leaping into the trees. Crack! Boom! The ground exploded with such force that it split the training ground in half and sent deep fissures through it. The shockwave that resulted knocked down every tree nearby. Before the forest collapsed, Kakashi just managed to get Sakura and Sasuke out of there. Naruto landed in the center of the crater, which was big enough to fit Kyuubi's foot, and yelled, "How's that for killer intent?" as he turned to face the training field. Kakashi assumed a fighting stance, aware that this battle would be very difficult. "All right, you 3. Your test will be 2, said Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame as they turned to face their sensei Kurenai Yuhi. Crack. BOOM. All heads turned abruptly in the direction of the loud noise. "What the fuck was that?" Akamaru whimpered in his coat, and Kiba started to shiver. Kurenai suddenly leapt off in the direction of the blast. "Kurenai, wait!" yelled Shino after her, but Kurenai had already jumped over the trees. Shino turned to face his 2 teammates, but Kiba slapped him across the face, knocking him out. Now that he's out of the way, Kiba smiled, turning to face the now frightened Hinata. "Let's get down to business." Kiba started to approach Hinata, who immediately assumed a Juken stance and said, Kiba, stay away from me, I'm warning why. You. Kiba laughed and spread his claws. Kiba threw himself at Hinata, pinning her to the ground and saying, "Naruto isn't here to save you this time." Kiba tried to grope Hinata, but she hurt the Inuzuka by sending chakra out through her body. Yipe! Kiba jumped back and gave a dog-like yelp, allowing Hinata to return to a Hyuga stance. Kiba growled, "I was going to be gentle with you, but forget that shit, I am going to take you so hard you won't be able to walk straight for months." Naruto is back. Although the punch did not land, the force behind it blew Kakashi back when he ducked under one of Naruto's blows. Naruto leapt into the air and swung his leg downward, saying, "Ha, is that all you got, Kakashi Hitaki?" Kakashi leapt out of the way so that Naruto's kick could slam into the ground, adding to the shockwave and sending gravel and rock flying everywhere. Kakashi barely avoided being slammed by Naruto's right arm by using Shunshin. When Naruto noticed faint blood on the tips of his fingers, he said, "Kukuku, it looks like I got him." "Damn, that freaking hurts," If I had waited a second longer I could have been cleaved in half. Kakashi appeared abruptly, clutching his side with blood streaming down his fingers and side. He then reached into his pouch and took out 3 medical pills, saying, "This should help me out for a little while." After removing his mask, Kakashi took the pills. Naruto abruptly punched his hand through the tree he was hiding behind just as he was about to continue his test. Well, it was more of a struggle for his life now. "Here's Shinin. Die." Naruto smiled as he sliced the tree in half, sending it tumbling to 2 pieces as he glanced at the now frightened Kakashi. As Naruto dug his right hand into the ground and sent a fissure in the direction of the escaping Jonin, Kakashi hardly moved. With a smile on his face, Naruto exclaimed, "Like a rat in a maze with a hungry snake. Let's see how long the rat lasts," before darting away in a blur of darkness. Returning with Hinata and Kiba's right arm was rendered essentially useless when Hinata struck all of his chakra points. The Inuzuka growled, "Akamaru, do it, Jujin Bunshin." Akamaru changed into an exact replica of Kiba and threw himself at Hinata, knocking her to the ground while keeping her arms in place and out of her way. "You shouldn't have resisted me, Hinata, now you are going to get it." Kiba stood up and grinned, slowly approaching and taking off his jacket with a seductive smile. Kiba was halfway through unzipping his zipper when Hinata fought beneath Akamaru's hold, attempting to escape. "Damn it," he said, reaching out to grope her. "Let me go." The whole area was filled with a carnal bloodlust as Hinata tore Akamaru from her and threw him straight into a tree. Kiba was about to grope her when Hinata's eyes suddenly opened, revealing her eyes full of bloodthirsty malice and her skin growing black spikes from her cheekbones. "Let me go," Hinata exclaimed. When Akamaru felt his spine snap, he let out a cry of agony and collapsed to the ground, whimpering and sobbing. Kiba turned to face Hinata, who was staring at him with murder on her face. Black spikes were emerging from her cheekbones, and her eyes were glowing lavender. He saw that portions of her shoulders were enlarging, and then more black spikes burst out. A black metallic structure started to cover her outer body, and her eyes glowed brighter. Hinata yelled, "Die Kiba! Raaggghhhh!" with a great deal of bloodlust, intending to crush Kiba underfoot like an ant. Returning with Naruto when Kurenai abruptly jumped into the field, Naruto was about to strike Kakashi viciously. "What the hell is going on here?" Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. Kurenai squinted at Naruto and yelled, "Kurenai, what are you doing here?" Kurenai was about to say, "I was testing my team when I heard massive explosions over here, so I came over here as quickly as I could and," when Naruto materialized in front of her, his right arm posing to cut her throat. Naruto's tone made Kurenai tremble, and she asked, "You left Kiba Inuzuka and Hinata Hyuga in the middle of the forest, alone?" Naruto's cyan eyes glowed with the intensity of a sun as he grabbed Kurenai's throat and said, "Of course I didn't. Shino is with them. Why is it a big deal?" "Why is it a big deal? Why is it a bad idea? Kiba has tried on multiple occasions to force himself on Hinata." Kurenai's eyes widened as he spoke. Before they could continue their conversation, a disgusting feeling filled the field. Bloodlust. Shit. Naruto jumped in the direction he felt the bloodlust, and judging by the appearance of Kurenai's squad, Naruto's eyes widened. His lord had shown this ability when he was explaining the various powers he possessed. Returning with Hinata, Kiba, the sole surviving male Inuzuka heir, had to cough up a lot of blood after Hinata smashed her fist into his stomach. As Hinata grabbed his hair and threw him into another tree, he collapsed to the ground, clutching his stomach. As Kiba hit the ground, he felt his spine crack. He was attempting to stand up, but his attempts were cut off when Hinata landed in front of him and roared, "Raw aaggghhhhh." She then slashed him across the face with multiple black claws that had grown on her hand. "Yeah." Kiba gripped his face as blood poured from his wounds, including the socket of his left eye. Hinata grabbed his hair and slammed his face into a tree before he could do anything. Crack! A loud crack sounded as Hinata kicked Kiba in the spine, causing him to fall to the ground. Hinata grabbed Kiba's arms and snapped them in one direction, crack, then twisted them around before tearing the arm upwards, tearing flesh and sending bone splinters into his flesh. Kiba screamed and started to cry in agony. Kiba's cries reverberated throughout the training area, og. As her teeth appeared to sharpen, Hinata growled and lifted her foot, threatening to crush Kiba's head. When a demon struck her with a knife and rendered her unconscious, she collapsed back into the arms of her attacker, the Abyssal God. As Naruto leapt through the trees on the opposite side of the field, his dark blue chakra encircling his form, the Abyssal God glanced at Hinata and said, Interesting. Your Grace, I was unaware that you would be here so soon." He bowed as soon as he saw the Abyssal God, who gestured for Naruto to approach. "What is it, my lord?" Naruto said as he rose from his bowing position and approached. When Kurenai and Kakashi landed in the clearing, the Abyssal God turned to Hinata and said, "It seems Tenku is not the only one of the 5 great races in this village, come." He then started to leave, carrying Hinata as Sasuke and Sakura approached slowly from behind. Kurenai reacted instantly when he saw Hinata in the god's arms. Kurenai instantly drew out a kunai and assumed a fighting stance, while the Abyssal God turned to face her and responded, "Who the hell are you, and what the hell are you doing with Hinata?" Kurenai's eyes widened in shock as she said, "I am the Abyssal God, as for the young Hyuga. I stopped her from killing the Inuzuka when he attempted to rape her. I find it odd that they were allowed to be alone together, when it was said on his profile that he has been charged numerous times with attempted sexual assault." Kurenai turned to face the Abyssal God, who was staring at her dismay. "I am surprised that Ajanan read the reports, and still left them alone." "You did. Read the reports, didn't you?" Kurenai said, sneering at the Inuzuka on the ground. As Naruto's left fist knocked the wind out of her, Kurenai looked down and said, Well, thought that after the test, if they passed I could have, OOOPH, Kurenai collapsed to her knees. As Kurenai attempted to push herself up, Naruto grabbed her by the hair and said, "The Hokage will hear about this, wench," before throwing her backwards and pursuing his master. Kakashi gave Kurenai a pitying look. Had she not read the reports, the Sandaime would have been incensed, and Kurenai would have been fortunate to continue her shinobi career. Jump ahead in time and see Naruto 20 minutes later. Naruto stared at Hinata Hyuga's still unconscious body. More of her body had been drastically shifting and changing over the past 20 minutes. At this point, her face was the only area of her body not covered by the black armor, and even that was changing. "My lord, what is happening to her?" Naruto asked, turning to face his master, who was standing in the corner. As he walked over to the sleeping Hyuga, the Abyssal God grinned and said, "It seems that young Hinata has the blood of a berserker, and a powerful one at that." He reached into his pocket and took out a glowing lavender orb, saying, "But, thanks to this, we will change that." The Abyssal God opened her mouth, dropped the orb in, and then used his fingers to massage her throat as she swallowed the orb. Nothing happened at first, but then her eyes opened and she screamed, "Rog hhhhhhh," as if her voice had changed as the black armor started to fade into her skin. Naruto watched in wonder as Hinata's body changed. Her legs became smooth but still had muscle, her legs turned lavender, her skin lightened, her hair became glossy and started to grow quickly, and her bust started to grow a little. She eventually stopped yelling and calmed down, returning to her sleep. Naruto gazed at her new form, and it was stunning. Her skin appeared to have been pampered as a princess should be, her hair appeared to be made of the finest silk, and her face featured lovely high cheekbones. Her bust had grown perfectly for her size. Gazing at the Abyssal God, Naruto said, "My lord, what was that object?" "The very essence of Jashin himself," the Abyssal God replied with a smile. "My brother would have given them a small portion of his essence, elevating them to a higher level of berserker. A transcendent berserker. When a berserker was shown to be genuinely loyal and consistently served Jashin. They possess strength, speed, and the ability to use skills that even the strongest ninja could only imagine. However, unlike berserkers, who are hideous under their black armor, transcendent berserkers are either the most attractive men in the world or the most beautiful maidens one has ever seen." "But your grace," Naruto said, turning to face his lord, "why doesn't Jashin make more transcendents? If they are so strong, why doesn't he make more?" The infernal deity laughed, "Because, my beloved servant, like my creations, the vampires, a transcendent berserker is extremely picky who their mate is, but when they find a mate, they become even more loyal to their mate than even to their god." After acknowledging with a nod, Naruto turned to face Hinata and asked, "So, my lord, what about her?" The Abyssal God grinned and said, "She will stay here for the time being." He was about to say something else when an Anbu unexpectedly materialized in the center of his apartment. "Shinin no Naruto, the council has, GRAAGH." Naruto opened the eye on his arm, and the Anbu was grabbed by the throat. "You swine, how dare you interrupt my lord?" When the Abyssal God grabbed the man's arm, Naruto was ready to use his eye on him. He turned to face the Anbu and said, "Naruto, please calm down. What is the council looking for?" Naruto let the man catch his breath by releasing the Anbu. "The council has called Shinin no Naruto in regards to the events that transpired yesterday and today." As he walked to the door, Naruto sneered, "I wonder what those old fools want." As the Abyssal God vanished into black shadows, Naruto opened the door, and the Anbu used Shunshin to depart. Naruto. Sama, Hinata muttered in her sleep as a smile appeared on her face. Hospital. The unconscious bodies of Kushina Uzumaki, Namikaze, Arashi Uzumaki, Namikaze, and Natsuki Uzumaki, Namikaze were examined by Hiruzen Sarutobi. The three were discovered traumatized and beaten on the outskirts of Konoha. Naruto, was this really necessary? Sighed the Sandaime. How are those three doing? He asked the doctors. The chief physician gazed at them and sighed. Well, I don't think the boy and girl will be prepared for shinobi duty for a few months, but they will recover quickly. I don't know about the mother. She exhibits characteristics that are comparable to those of the civilians we have brought in, but her mind is still partially functional. The civilians, on the other hand, are just vegetables. I don't think she'll ever be able to return to that field because she won't be able to do anything physical for months. Hiruzen sighed, which dampened the situation and left Tenku without a sensei or a team. As he was ready to leave and go to his office, an Anbu said, Sandaime Sama, the council has been called as directed. In a few minutes, Naruto will arrive. Hiruzen nodded his head before heading off in the direction of the council chambers. After 10 minutes Tenku, Shinin no Naruto, and Kurenai Yuhi were seated in the middle of the room, while the rest of the council was seated in their individual chairs. The Genjutsu mistress turned to face the Sandaime as Hiruzen got up and said, Now. The council shall address Kurenai Yuhi. Kurenai. I am very disappointed in you. You have displayed total disregard for your squad. It was stated in the reports of Hinata Hyuga and Kiba Inuzuka that those two were never to be left alone with each other. A genin does not count. Why were you not with your team when Kiba managed to attack Shino before he turned his attention to Hinata? I didn't know Kiba would attempt such a thing. If I did, Kurenai swallowed. Heishi got up and said, The details of every attempt sexual assault on my daughter was written in Kiba's profile. I fail to see how you could not have seen this would happen, unless of course you neglected to read the files. I am disappointed in you, Kurenai. When you were assigned your team, you were supposed to read through their profiles right away. Why did you not do that? Hiruzen said as Kurenai turned away. Kurenai turned to face the Sandaime and said, I thought it would be better to wait and see if they would pass or not. As a jonin, you were required to review their skills and weaknesses, regardless of whether you thought they would pass or not, Heishi said, slamming his fist into the desk. Yes, honorable council. I will not make the same mistake next time. Kurenai bowed her head. There won't be a next time, Kurenai, she said, looking up at the Sandaime. Kurenai's eyes grew wide. Sandaime Sama, what do you mean? Hiruzen reclined in his seat. What I am saying, Kurenai, is that not only have you shown yourself as an incapable sensei, but also an incapable jonin. You are hereby stripped of your jonin rank, with no chance for promotion. You are also forbidden from taking up a single student without consent from the council and the acting Hokage. Kurenai got to his feet and said, Please, Sandaime Sama, be sensible. Quiet. You have shown yourself to be unfit and unworthy of the jonin rank. Now leave, Hiruzen yelled at her as he got to his feet. Kurenai turned and left the room despite her desire to protest. Shinin no Naruto, we are here to discuss your possible involvement on an attack on Kushina Uzu, Hiruzen said with a sigh as he turned to face Naruto. Yes, I was the one who admitted them to the hospital. Do you have an issue with that? The whole council was taken aback. How could anyone so casually discuss taking their mother to the hospital? Naruto, do you have any idea on what you just did? Asked Hiruzen, glancing at Naruto, who nodded his head and continued. Yes, I was defending myself from them, when they tried to kidnap and wipe out my memory, then mold me into what they want me to be. I fail to see how me putting them in the hospital is not alright, when they tried to turn me into a fucking puppet to their will. Naruto, are you absolutely positive that? Everyone asked, stunned by what Kushina had attempted to do. Naruto interrupted the Hokage and got to his feet. Yes, you fucking old man, they tried to wipe out my memory, and I made sure they suffered for it. Anything else? Cause if not, I need to get back home to check up on Hinata. What do you mean, Hinata? What happened to my daughter? Heishi jumped out of his chair. Everyone turned to face the abyssal god as the room's shadows started to change and he said, Your daughter has ascended, Ninjin. Be honored Hyuga, for it is your daughter that has become the first Transcendent Berserker in over 1,000 years. Everyone stared at the abyssal god, not understanding what he was saying. Are you referring to Transcendent Berserker? The abyssal god laughed while strolling alongside Naruto. That is irrelevant at the moment. We should probably be speaking on how the teams will be arranged. The abyssal god released a dark aura, silencing the Hokage, and Hiruzen said, We have already organized a second squad placement, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura under Kakashi, and Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, and Tenku under It is my decision, not yours to make. As for the other teams, I think Hinata will be better suited to be with Naruto. As for Tenku, I doubt that pairing her with Ninjin will be advantageous for her. Kakashi Hatake is a pitiful man who could never teach my servant anything that he cannot outclass or already knows. And what team would you suggest? Abyssal God, said a counselor who had just risen to his feet. The Abyssal God pointed to Naruto and smiled. Tenku, Hinata Hyuga, and Shinin no Naruto make up the three-man squad. In a few years, the three of them will surpass the Sannin by a significant margin, and they could easily defeat a sizable portion of the Jonin in this village. Naruto was able to put Kakashi on the ropes by himself. Hinata is getting stronger every second and will soon be able to match Tsunade in strength, and Tenku could easily outshine the majority of the Chunin in this village. The council discussed the pros and cons of this. As Hiruzen got to his feet, he said, the three of them need a Jonin instructor, otherwise they will never be able to excel in rank. The Abyssal God laughed and opened his palm. A law book from a nearby bookshelf approached his hand, which he quickly opened and perused. According to law set up by the Naidame, if a team of genin can manage to produce twice the average of missions for their rank, along with a set number of higher-ranked missions, they automatically become eligible for the Chunin exams, regardless of a Jonin instructor. It also states that if one or more of the genin display abilities exceeding Chunin rank, then the squad does not need to be assigned a Jonin instructor, and by the looks of it, all three of them are stronger than a Chunin. Very well, Shinin no Naruto, Hinata Hyuga, and Tenku are now a three-man squad. You will be known as Squad Omega. The Sandame sighed, realizing he had been defeated, despite his desire to argue against it. Soon, my servant. Our plans can begin, the Abyssal God said with a smile as he turned to face Naruto. Tenku looked at Naruto anxiously and said, I guess we will be working together. She then started to examine him and noticed his toned muscles, saying, damn, he is hot. No, bad thoughts, Tenku. Bad thoughts. But even after she made an effort to look away, she couldn't help but stare at him again, blushing at his body. When the Abyssal God saw this, he smiled and said, how intriguing. The following day, while Hinata remained asleep, Naruto waited in his home. It seems that a berserker must awaken from the transcendental state for at least 24 hours, and the entire process takes 72 hours. Naruto noticed a lavender aura enveloping Hinata as he peered into her sleeping quarters. When he heard a knock on the front door, he shrugged his shoulders and went to his own room, thinking, so Tenku is here already. Hello Naruto, I was told we would be meeting here, he said as he approached the door and opened it to reveal that Tenku was indeed standing in front of him. Would you like anything to eat, drink? Naruto asked, smiling as he gestured for her to enter, then shut the door after she had done so. Tenku glanced around and said, some tea would be nice, thank you. Naruto nodded his head and proceeded to the kitchen, where she found herself staring at his ass and watching as it said, no, damn it Tenku, I thought I was over this. She sighed and sat down on the couch. After 10 minutes, Naruto emerged carrying a black tray filled with 3 cups of tea, setting one in front of Tenku, one in front of himself, and the final one on the side. Now that we are teammates, we might as well introduce ourselves. Do you want to go first or should I? Naruto said after taking a sip of his tea. Tenku was about to reply when a door slammed open and a weary Hinata emerged, completely nude. After she had finished stretching, Hinata opened her eyes to see Naruto and Tenku staring at her. Normally, Hinata would have fainted, but her transformation caused her to do the exact opposite. She smiled sensuously and walked over to Naruto, placing herself in his lap and whispering into his ear, "Why hello Naruto." Sama, while pressing her form against his chest. Unaccustomed to Hinata's daring gesture, Naruto flushed at the unexpected female contact. "Hello Hinata. Chan, how are you this morning?" "Oh, I am doing fine Naruto. Sama, in fact." Hinata clenched her fist and smiled as she positioned herself in Naruto's lap, causing the blonde to mutter lightly. "I felt greater than ever." She punched in the direction of the wall, sending a wave that toppled everything in its path. "And to think she hasn't even fully ascended, how powerful will she be when the process is complete?" said Naruto, impressed by her skill. Naruto turned to Tenku and said, "Well, maybe we should start with introductions since Hinata just arrived, but first," he turned to Hinata and said, "Hinata, please put on some clothes." Hinata nodded her head and smiled. "As you wish, Naruto." Sama. She got up from his lap and started to skip toward the room to find a set of clothes to wear. A few minutes later, she emerged wearing the outfit his master had left behind, which included a tattered lavender upper shirt that accentuated her figure, a large deep lavender shoulder and neck guard, shoulder pads that swung towards the back like wings. But the shoulder pads had strange grooves in them, 2 deep lavender gauntlets that covered her hand and a third of her forearm, a deep lavender set of armored lower pieces, and a lavender tattered cloak that hung off the back of her waist. She crossed her legs and took a seat beside Naruto. After glancing at them, Naruto said, "So, who would like to begin first?" With a raised hand, Hinata said, "All right, tell us about yourself." Leaning closer to Naruto, Hinata grinned and said, "My name is Hinata Hyuga. I like Naruto. Sama. I like cinnamon buns. I feel the need to say that I love fighting. In any case, I detest Kiba. Teme, the majority of my clan, and anyone who has ever harmed Naruto. Sama. My dream is to be with Naruto. Sama forever." Alright then, okay. Tenku, do you want to go or should I?" Naruto said with an uncomfortable smile. Tenku turned away nervously, saying, Could you go perhaps?" He grinned, "Sure. My name is Shinny no Naruto. I like my new master, and ramen, along with my newfound freedom. I despise the Yondaime and all who are related to him by any means or fashion. My goal is to see my master's dream obtained." 10. Chan, your turn, Hinata said with a very feline grin as she turned to face Tenku. With a sigh, Tenku sat up straight and said, "I am Tenku, I like, She blushed slightly and said, "My lord," with a hint of uncertainty. "And I also enjoy practicing new holy spells. I greatly dislike my entire family, and all those who followed their words." Tenku appeared to tighten her fist. "My goal, I really have no idea anymore. I thought it was to serve Kami Sama herself, but now wonder if my race should serve her after what I have seen." "Why do you hate your family?" Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. Tenku turned away, seemingly refusing to respond. "Very well, if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. But getting it off your chest in the future might help you." Naruto shrugged his shoulders and said, "Now then, let's go get our first mission, shall we?" Time jump. A month half of the requirements to prepare for the Chunin exams had already been fulfilled in the first month of Squad Omega's formation. Dozens of people specifically asked for them because they had completed so many D ranks in half the time. Their 17th C rank mission was to find and eliminate a local bandit camp that had been attacking towns. As the bandits started to draw in their supply, Naruto sat in a tree and watched. "Hey boys." Naruto snapped his head in the direction he heard the voice and saw a tall man dragging 3 women in chains. "Looks like I found our entertainment for tonight," Naruto said, pointing out that the majority of the items they had pulled in were food and gold. The 3 women started to shake, and the bandits cheered. They were flung into the center of the banditti by the big man. "This ends now," Naruto growled, switching on his walkie-talkie. "Hinata, you may proceed, leave none alive." The 3 women were huddled together and trembling back at the bandit camp, attempting to keep as far away from the men as they could. A very ugly man grabbed one of them by the hair and pulled her in front of him, saying, "Ooh, she is a cute one. I wonder which hole will feel best." "Why don't we find out now?" said another man as he started to remove his trousers. The woman's clothing was ripped off, her arms were seized, and her legs were splayed violently. As he approached her, the man said, "Oh, don't worry, I am going to make your pussy feel even better." He ripped off her underwear and placed his member in front of her entrance, saying, "Here I come." He went to insert his member inside her. The man heard the voice and looked up, seeing a lavender light before his body was blasted to pieces. Raiden. Raiko Dageki. Everyone was splattered with blood. The woman was shocked by what she saw when she looked up. If the hourglass figure and breasts were any indication, a feminine figure hovered over them. She wore a long, spined, demonic lavender helmet with a frill running down her back. A lavender aura emanated from her shoulder pads, resembling frayed wings. "Oh, naughty, naughty men, trying to rape a young maiden, I'm afraid I have to kill you now," the floating being said, chuckling in a voice that seemed to scatter. "Raiden. Raiko Kusari," she said, her fingers arcing with lavender-colored lighting, before pointing them at one of the bandits. A lightning bolt struck the bandit in the heart before anyone could move. The bandit's body then functioned as a conductor, sending dozens of additional lavender-colored lightning bolts at the other bandits. The bandit who brought in the 3 girls was the only one left standing after Hinata snapped her fingers. "I have a special treat for you," she said, performing a series of hand signals. "Kaden. Hahira." Her hands ignited with a lavender fire, and before the big man realized it, Hinata had already wrapped her hands around his throat, saying, "Burn in the bowels of the abyss ninja." The man's screams reverberated through the air as the fire reduced his body to nothing but ash. The women gazed at Hinata in astonishment and fear. Hinata said, "Well, let's get you 3 out of here," as she turned to face the women and took off her demonic mask. Tenku received a radio message from Naruto saying, "Tenku, mission accomplished." The office of the Hokage. The three women were brought to the Hokage's office by Team Omega. The Anbu escorted the three to their new residences after finding them a place to live in Konoha's West District. Looking at the three in front of him, Hiruzen realized that they were the strongest genin in Konoha's history, possibly even in the elemental nations. He frequently pondered how Naruto would fare against Kushina Uzumaki, Namikaze, who Kakashi Hatake could defeat on his own. When Hinata was fully utilizing her berserker form, her strength was on par with Tsunade's. In addition, her Byakugan gave her 10 times better control over her chakras. It was interesting, Tenku. She made every effort to never demonstrate her abilities, she only used spells and chants, but Hiruzen could have been certain he saw her exerting himself to employ various strategies. You three have completed a total of 17 C-rank missions, 3 more and you will qualify for a B rank, now, he said, sighing, reaching for another mission form, but before he could say anything more, the office doors were slammed open and a man entered with a messenger scroll. Sandame. Sama, Kakashi Hatake and Team Beta has encountered difficulties with their C rank. Looking at the man, Hiruzen asked, what kind of difficulties? After reading the contents of the scroll, the man said, it would seem that they have encountered the demon brothers Maizu and Gozu, 2 C rank nuke nins from Kirigakure. What, that bumps the mission up to B rank, when are they returning? Hiruzen's eyes widened. They have decided to continue with the mission, and are calling for backup, the messenger went on. The Sandame was about to rant when Sarutobi slammed his fist against the desk and exclaimed, what? Sandame. Sama. The elderly Hokage looked toward Team Omega. Perhaps we should go and assist them, we are more than capable, and sending a single Jonin would only compromise village security. Besides, we need a B rank to get to the Chunin exams, why not use this opportunity? Hiruzen gave it some thought. Sure, they will likely encounter more missing nin, who are likely to be far more powerful than the Demon Brothers, but then again, it was surprising that the three of them hadn't already outperformed him because they were growing stronger so quickly. Sighing, he glanced at Omega. Very well, I want you three to go and assist Team Beta, Naruto. Looked at Hiruzen, when you and your squad gets there, you three will take charge. You are free to punish them if they decide to disobey your orders. Meet up at the front gate with all equipment, you are heading to Nami no Kuni. After kicking open his apartment door, Naruto gathered his supplies. Time to see how well this does against actual ninja. He hurled his armor onto his body and tested the claws, kicking aside the couch and smashing his fist through the floor, sending splinters everywhere. Let's see how well this bad boy does, he said, pulling it back out and bringing out a large case that was as tall and wide as he was. His smile seemed to come from both sides of his face. Naruto exposed a seal after pushing aside some of his clothing. As it drew the item in, the seal twisted. Naruto went across the room to get some supplies, including food, medicine, and a few other essentials. He sensed a sinister presence in the room just as he was ready to leave for the door to meet with his team. When Naruto turned, he saw his master standing behind him. Naruto, I see you've gotten stronger, how is that weapon of yours? He asked. Naruto stood up and said, as for the weapon, I will test it on my next mission. Perhaps if I am lucky I will be able to face somebody worth fighting. Naruto bowed on one knee and said, Master, yes, I have grown stronger my lord. As he recalled the day Naruto had requested a weapon, the Abyssal God laughed. Rewind with a sigh, Naruto stood up straight and gave the Abyssal God a questioning look. A weapon? Why would you possibly require a weapon? He asked. Your Excellency, I recently returned from a C rank where I was forced to fight a skilled swordsman. My new arm may be strong enough to crush armies, but I can't rely on it, as the day may come where I will not be able to use it. The Abyssal God reached to his hip and withdrew a pure black orb, saying, True, but it will take some time. And once you get the weapon, you must wait a few days before you can utilize it. The god rubbed his chin. Charge some of your energy into that orb, and in 3 weeks, my forgers shall build you a weapon like none before it, he said, placing it in Naruto's hand. With a nod, Naruto grasped the orb and directed his energy towards it. Like Naruto's own chakra, the orb glowed a dark bluish color as it started to change. The orb changed into a sheet of rusty metal that radiated a dark, odorous aura. Reaching for the metal, the Abyssal God inspected it. In 3 weeks Naruto, your weapon will be finished, he said, smiling as he turned away from Naruto. The Abyssal God vanished in a black flash, leaving Naruto alone. Final flashback 3 weeks as scheduled, the weapon had arrived in the case he had sealed, since he wouldn't be able to use the weapon until he engaged in combat with someone who was either as skilled as he was or more skilled than him. Most of his opponents were essentially eliminated because they were merely bandits. "What is it you wish of me, my lord?" exclaimed Naruto, standing erect and crossing his arm across his chest. With a solemn expression, the Abyssal God approached Naruto and said, "Naruto, I need you to do a few things for me on your mission in Wave." Alongside Hinata humming a tune, Hinata snatched up her materials and supplies. When Hinata reached for her bag, she said, "Hinata," the young berserker turned to face her father, who was standing there, and said, "I heard that you will be going on a B-rank mission." "I just got the mission a few minutes ago. How did you find out about it already?" Hinata said, turning to face Heishi. As he entered the room, Heishi sighed and said, "I was told by the Sandame, it is customary for the Hokage to send Anbu out to tell a shinobi's parents should they be about to head on a B-rank mission or higher." "Very well, Hinata nodded her head, accepting the response. "I have to get going, don't want to keep my teammates waiting." She picked up her bag and proceeded past her father, heading for the door, when Heishi grabbed her shoulder. Hinata turned to face Heishi, who was wearing a worried expression, and said, "Please be safe." Hinata grinned and gave her father a brief embrace before saying, "I will too. San." She then let go of her father and made her way to the main gate. As he returned to the compound, her father sighed and said, "You would be so proud of our daughter, my beloved Natara." Alongside Tenku, if one were to look at Tenku, one would think she was at peace, but if one could read minds, it would be quite different. She sat in front of the gates, gathering all of her belongings before she left. "I wonder how big he is under those pants. No, bad thoughts, but maybe if I were to just catch him as he showers I could. I will not allow myself to be commanded by lust. I will not allow myself to be commanded by lust. I will not allow myself to be commanded by lust." Tenku gripped her head and started reciting this mantra until she sensed two people approaching her. She looked up to see Hinata approaching her, dressed in a black armored tank top and black shoulder pads. In addition to a pair of Anbu pants that are extremely tight, she had a pair of lavender arm bracers on her wrists. "My lord is extremely sadistic. Did he have to shove the thing in my head?" Naruto sighed as he lightly punched the side of his head, appearing to be holding his head in mild pain as he emerged wearing his armor made from Kyuubi's bones. All three of them were looking at a piece of paper. "Okay, we are going to go and assist Kakashi Teme and his idiot squad. Once we are there, we will take control. This document will prove that we are in charge. If anyone on the team questions our authority, we have permission to use force to get them to obey. Are all of you ready? This is our first B-rank mission after all." Tenku nodded her head and swallowed, saying, "Yes, Naruto." As she stretched, Hinata smiled and said, "I am itching for a fight." "Good, let's rock." Naruto smiled as he put the scroll away. The group turned and jumped out of the gates, making their way to Nami no Kuni Hospital in Kushina to demonstrate that she had a heartbeat. Kushina was connected to a device that beeped continuously. Natsuki and Arashi were seated in chairs beside the bed. Arashi gripped his fractured arm, which would take several weeks to heal. He turned to face his sister and spoke with a lisp due to his broken jaw. "So, how are we going to get Aniki back?" he asked. Natsuki's kidneys, stomach, and lung had all been punctured. In addition to having multiple artificial pumps keeping her heart functioning, she now has a synthetic lung to replace the one that was destroyed. There was now a split in her head. The skull would heal, but the spot where it split open would always be scarred, and the hair stopped growing there. "I don't know, but we must try something. Anything." Natsuki sighed. "There must be a way we can persuade Aniki to come home with us," she said, getting up and pacing the room. "I have an idea. But we will need Mom's help to do it," Arashi said, sighing as he assumed a contemplative pose and then smiling broadly. Natsuki looked at Arashi and saw that spark in his eyes, the same spark he always had when he thought of a plan that could kill them, and the irony was that she liked those kinds of plans the most. Hospital in Kiba Inuzuka was lying in his bed, staring at the ceiling. Hinata had completely torn off his right arm, and there was no way to put it back on. His face had two pads on it, with faint singe marks beneath them. Putting his left hand to his cheek, he recalled what had transpired after his mother had learned. Rewind. As the medical staff checked on Kiba in the hospital bed, the chief physician turned to the nurses and said, "All right, then. We can start the procedure." They had salvaged enough of Kiba's arm that they might be able to reattach it. Kiba would never have enough movement in the arm to become a shinobi again, but it was enough that he could live a somewhat normal life, the nurse said, grabbing the stitches. The room's door was kicked off its hinges just as the doctor was ready to start suturing the arm. Sume Inuzuka was extremely irate when the doctors turned to face the door. "Kiba. You are a tiny shit. Kiba, you little shit. I am ashamed of you, because of you." The Hyuga clan has demanded a huge amount of our clan funds and jutsu, because the heir to our clan attempted to rape the heir of their clan. Sume said, pushing the doctors out of the way as she grabbed Kiba by the front of his shirt. By order of the council of the Inuzuka clan, and approval of the Inuzuka head, you are now the Omega of our clan, Sume said, releasing Kiba. I can't protect you from the council anymore, nor do I want to. Sume then took out a piece of metal and charged chakra into it, causing it to glow red with heat. She struck Kiba's cheek with a flaming metal object, causing the flesh to burn and scorch. She pulled the metal piece off and slapped it on his other cheek, and Kiba screamed in pain as he tried to pry her away, but her hold was too tight. You will now be married off to the daughter of the daimyo of Sume no Kuni. I hope to avoid this, Kiba, but you had this coming. Sume left the room as Kiba's eyes widened in fear. Kiba's face no longer bore the marks of the Inuzuka fangs. Instead, it was singed flesh, but the singes appeared to heal in a week. It was said that the daughter of the daimyo was a mad sadist who loved to inflict pain on others and was particularly cruel to men who were attracted to her. As the medical professionals tried to reattach Kiba's arm, he started to whimper. Final flashback. Additionally, Kiba had lost Akamaru, and his ninkin would now be trained, and they hardly ever lived longer than 3 years. Kiba gripped his ripped limb and whimpered, terrified of what lay ahead. 2 days after Naruto's group, Hinata and Tenku landed immediately after Naruto, who leapt through the trees and landed in front of a large body of water. I might be able to fly us over, but I could only take one at a time, Tenku sighed. When Tenku said, hey, are you listening to me? I said we. Naruto walked toward the water, not really listening to him. If we tried to find a different route, we would waste valuable time. Naruto stepped on the water and started to cross, with Hinata following closely behind, skipping as she approached Naruto. Of course, water. Walking, Tenku sighed as she released her true form, flapping her wings once as she took to the air as Hinata and Naruto crossed the water. Tenku watched them cross, then slapped her face. In less than a few minutes, they crossed over and raced through the trees. Hinata turned to face Naruto and said, Naruto-kun, how will we locate Kakashi's group? After giving it some thought, Naruto said, well, considering the Jonin's identity and the members of their team, we will either A, feel the huge surge of chakra because those guys aren't smart enough to manage it properly. A fangirl scream that is so loud that we can hear it from anywhere in this fucking country. And the final option is C, everything mentioned above. They halted when they heard a screaming sound and experienced a tremendous surge of chakra. Turning to Hinata, Naruto said, see, told you so. Naruto then leapt back into the trees, followed by Hinata and Tenku, in the direction they believed Kakashi's team was. Alongside Kakashi, Kakashi blocked a blow from the big nuke. In front of him, who was Zabuza Momochi, the most well-known and weakest of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Although Kakashi leapt over the blade and landed on its side, Zabuza swung his Kubariki Hocho sideways. Kakashi fell off the enormous blade as the Kiri.Nin swung his blade in a different direction and pulled it backward. When Zabuza tried to cut the Copy.Nin in half down the middle, he ran at Kakashi and swung the blade down. Kakashi anticipated this and used a pair of kunai to block the former Kiri.Nin's oncoming blow. Since Kakashi was still holding the blade with the kunai, he was flung as Zabuza snarled and swung the blade sideways. The water was heavier than usual, so Kakashi slammed into it, but before he could pull himself out, Zabuza appeared beside him. If the curve of the bandages was any indication, he was grinning and said, should have been more careful, Sharingan no Kakashi, Suiro no Jutsu. Kakashi's eyes widened as a sphere of water surrounded him, and before he knew it, he was inside a ball of water. As his team fought off Zabuza's water clones, Shino and Sasuke were struggling, and Sakura was on the verge of passing out from sheer terror as her 2 teammates attempted to shield her. Due to the fact that the clones were composed of water, the buds found it extremely difficult to reach the chakra, which Shino was consuming with his Kakaichu. The water clones would simply put out the fire before it could reach Sasuke when he attempted to use his fireballs. The clones continued to pass through Sakura's Bunshin despite her attempts to confuse them with her standard Bunshin jutsu. When Kakashi felt his fist crack from punching the sphere, he curled his hand back in pain and said, damn, it felt like I was punching an iron wall. Snapping his fingers, Zabuza laughed and said, now for the second stage of my Suiro no Jutsu. What is this? Kakashi stumbled and fell as he felt his chakra start to drain. Gazing at Kakashi, Zabuza chuckled and said, you like my upgrade to the Suiro no Jutsu? It devours the chakra of whoever is trapped inside, and puts it into me. He took a deep breath as he felt his chakra rejuvenate, saying, I feel stronger already, Zabuza smiled and said, time to finish off your brats. Time to die brats, the water clones said, smiling as they swung their own enormous Zanbatu upwards. The genin closed their eyes, anticipating the inevitable clang, when all three blades came to a halt. Upon noticing this, Zabuza growled, what the hell is going on? The water clones regarded the person who had halted their attacks. The one on the far left was a girl with very light blonde hair, a strong feminine figure, fair skin, and lovely blue eyes, all dressed in a white battle kimono with various elaborate designs. Wearing a black armored tank top with black shoulder pads, skin-tight Anbu pants, lavender arm bracers on her wrists, and an amazing bust, the girl on the far right had long, glossy dark blue hair and pale skin fit for a princess. They were shocked by the boy in the center, who had cyan eyes and spiky white hair, and a pale grayish skin tone. He was dressed in armor that seemed to absorb all the light that touched it. There was an orb with a slit through it in the center of his forearm, and it was covered in black armor with a long red vein-like structure running through the center, forming a set of red claws. Is this it? Is this all you idiots have to offer? Said the middle member. Then I don't even need to raise a finger to finish you off, Naruto said, snapping the water clone's sword and letting it splash to the ground in a puddle. As Naruto advanced and turned to face Zabuza, Tenku and Hinata completed their own water clones, saying, Zabuza Momochi, we meet at last. Hey brat, what the hell are you babbling about? Zabuza asked, looking perplexed. With a laugh, Naruto rubbed his chin with his demonic arm and said, Oh me? Well, it appears that my master has a desire for me. Rewind, Naruto, on your mission in Wave, I need you to do a few things for me, the Abyssal God said gravely as he approached Naruto, who immediately knelt down in front of his master. My lord, what do you want from me? Sitting on the couch, the Abyssal God gazed at Naruto. You will come across Zabuza Momochi and his apprentice while on your quest to Nami no Kuni. Both of these are essential to my strategy. I want you to bring their souls to me, Naruto said, staring at the Abyssal God in disbelief at his request. Your Excellency, how am I to bring you their souls? The Abyssal God approached Naruto and took hold of his right arm. You are aware that this arm gives you extraordinary strength and enables you to use a genjutsu that renders the Sharingan Tsukuyomi insignificant. However, you are completely ignorant of its additional powers. Naruto glanced at his arm before turning to face the Abyssal God. My lord, what are its other capabilities? The Abyssal God got up, moved over to the window, and looked out. That arm is the Abyssal God's right arm. It has many levels of power, and I've already given you 3. The Abyssal God went for his belt, withdrew 2 more orbs, and approached Naruto. The next tier is the ability to tear out a person's soul, he said. There are many more. The tiers I have granted you are strength great enough to injure a Biju. The power to cast an illusion so powerful it makes the abilities of the Tsukuyomi and the Kurama clan look like parlor tricks, and I just recently gave you the ability to unleash a greater power within, but you cannot use that power unless your life is in danger. You can use the soul however you like after you've done that. The Abyssal God flicked the eye on Naruto's arm and placed it in one of the orbs. You can either send him to me or you can completely obliterate it, making sure the person's soul can never pass through the gates of reincarnation. Not even my brother, the Shinigami, could possibly find the soul's fragments and put them back together. A strange feeling swept through Naruto's body as he watched the orb merge with the eye. Also, when you arrive in Wave, I will give you your next assignment, but first, the Abyssal God said, glancing at the final orb. Before Naruto could move, the orb merged with his body and pushed into his forehead, causing him a good deal of pain. Final flashback as he cracked his right claws, Naruto smiled and said, Now, to carry out my lord's will. Maybe you should bring your young apprentice out here, unless they're obviously afraid or something. As Kakashi went limp toward the water's surface, Zabuza sneered and withdrew his hand from the water sphere. I don't need him to take you on, brat. As Kakashi floated in the water, barely conscious enough to notice Zabuza running in Naruto's direction, he ran in his direction. Naruto sidestepped the huge blade as Zabuza swung his Kubariki Hocho and kicked him. The Kiri.Nin blocked the blow with his forearm, but he winced when he felt a bruise on part of his arm. Damn, that fucking hurts. He backhanded Naruto's foot away and swung his Zanbatu at Naruto. Zabuza swiftly deflected the blade and blocked the 5 shuriken that Naruto threw at him with his Kubariki Hocho. After landing feet first on the water's surface, Naruto launched himself at Zabuza, brandishing a kunai before Zabuza swung his Kubariki Hocho, slicing the weapon in half and chopping it across Naruto's body. With blood streaming from his chest, the former Jinchuriki flew backwards and skidded across the water's surface. He lifted his Kubariki Hocho over his shoulder and laughed, saying, I have to admit kid, you are a hell of a lot tougher than I first thought, but I am still better than you. Zabuza started to move forward to decapitate the child, but he was interrupted by a dark chuckle from Naruto's motionless form. Mawahahahaha. Ha ha ha, ha ha, ha ha ha. This is going to be so much fun. Naruto said, jerking his head up, flipping to his feet, and reaching for the seal around his waist. I have wanted to try this baby out so badly, but my master forbids me from using it unless I met an opponent stronger than me, Naruto said, extending the claws on his armor as a black flash covered him as he took out a large black box and placed it standing upright on the water. Now, I have that chance. Naruto cut the box with his claws, shattering it like glass. Using his left hand, Naruto grasped his weapon's hilt and swung it out, exposing its shape. It was a huge sword, with a long handle and a broad figure. The crossbar was a huge hilt that appeared to bend in the center. The blade was spiked on both sides, and the end was both blunt and sharp. Now, let's see how well your sword adds up to mine. Naruto smiled as he sent chakra through the blade, causing it to glow a deep crimson. Blades clashed between Naruto's and Zabuza's as he dashed forward and swung his sword. By pushing upward, Naruto made it possible for the Kubariki Hocho to be cut by the sword's saw, like blades. Shit, that sword is strong. But by the looks of it, this kid is a novice, Zabuza said, leaping back and glancing at the crack in the sword. He then swung his sword over his head and increased the speed, saying, let's see how well he dodges this. He threw the spinning blade at Naruto, who merely smiled as he swung his blade upwards. The Kubariki Hocho collided with Naruto's sword and broke as it hit it. At Zabuza's shocked expression, Naruto smiled and said, don't be surprised. The best smiths in the court of the Abyssal Gods forged this blade. Along with that, this weapon carries strengths that only my master would dare to use. Naruto flicked a switch, causing the smaller blades to spin around the edge. Your frail weapon, made by ninja and mediocre smiths, could never compare to it. The blades started to spin faster and faster, sending a whirring sound. Let's see how well you fight against me now. As the enormous chainsaw blade sliced through the atmosphere, scattering the fog, Naruto dashed forward. Zabuza was able to retreat far enough as he made the hand signals, Sweden. Suiryuenden no Jutsu. A huge water dragon emerged from the lake and lunged towards the blonde. As he ran toward the charging dragon, Naruto smiled and slashed at it with his sword, sending it flying into water particles as he charged in Zabuza's direction. Zabuza couldn't react in time because Naruto was approaching too quickly for him to avoid. Naruto dropped his sword and fell face first into the water after feeling dozens of bullets strike his arm just as he was about to strike Zabuza. When he saw a hunter.nin leap out of the trees and draw a bunch of senbon needles, Naruto looked up and said, Zabuza. Sama, forgive me, but if I had not intervened you would most assuredly been killed. I got an even better one. Huragh, Zabuza snorted and grabbed Naruto's sword, saying, you could have come out before he destroyed my sword Haku. Sigh, no matter. Zabuza sent the blonde flying toward the shore as he swung the blade in Naruto's direction. Naruto felt a huge gash appear on his side and slammed into the beach. Hinata rushed to Naruto's aid, saying, Naruto, Sama. Glancing up at her, Naruto yelled, remain back. This is my battle, I am not going down. No way am I going down. Not like this, Naruto said, using his right arm to propel himself upward and turn to face the two approaching opponents. Haku and Zabuza leapt on the shore and swung his right arm, but Zabuza blocked it with the enormous sword. Haku, using some kind of ice style jutsu, leapt behind him and threw a hail of senbon into Naruto's back as he ran forward. Haku kicked Naruto in the back, sending some of the senbon from earlier deeper into his back, while Zabuza punched him in the face, sending the blonde flying backwards. No, I can't use that spell, Tenku said, squeezing her hand into a hand sign. As Naruto slashed Zabuza's face with his claws, causing deep gashes, he was knocked down. Ga! As Naruto attempted to kick the former Kiri.nin, Zabuza gripped his face, but before he could strike, Haku formed an ice mirror in front of him. The blonde flew into the air as Zabuza swung Naruto's sword and cut across his chest, causing blood to splash. When Naruto's eyes opened, he saw the horrified expressions on Hinata and Tenku's faces. I can't die yet, he said as he flew through the air. I can't fail my lord, he said as he felt a tug from his arm that seemed to get stronger as he fell toward the ground. With the intention of finishing him, Zabuza and Haku charged at him. Together with the eye on his arm, Naruto's eyes exploded open, saying, I can't lose, not to the likes of you. an explosion of energy erupted from Naruto's body as he landed on his feet. The wave threw Zabuza and Haku back, causing Zabuza to drop the sword. The aura blasted away the trees around Hinata and Tenku, who were barely surviving. Shino, Sakura, and Sasuke were holding on to anything they could to prevent themselves from taking off. After making it to shore, Kakashi was horrified by what he witnessed. From the point where Naruto's natural flesh and the arm met, a dark aura spread up the arm and started to stick to Naruto's flesh, causing the eye on his arm to glow bright red. The energy spread up Naruto's body until it covered his arm entirely. Seishu Kurai Sadaki. Ta. Mineta Modu. Kai, was said as the former blonde looked up, his eyes glimmering an unholy red. Naruto's head and the rest of his body were enveloped in a black aura. His right arm was the only item that remained the same. Die. Naruto stepped forward and vanished in a loud explosion, leaving a crater where he had been. He pointed his hand at Haku and Zabuza. Naruto was in front of Zabuza, holding him by the throat before he could respond. Zabuza, Momochi, Naruto said, lifting his right hand and pressing it into Zabuza's chest. Zabuza recoiled as the arm tightened around his chakra and moved through his body. The hand was abruptly torn out by Naruto, and a spray of blood and a physical form resembling Zabuza emerged from his body. As Naruto tightened his hold on Zabuza's soul, his body collapsed in a heap on the ground. His eyes widened as Zabuza turned to face his prone body and said, "What have you done to me?" The Kiri.Nin shuddered at the sight of the demonic creature as the eye on Naruto's arm opened and turned to face Zabuza. Haku was horrified to see his master lying on the ground with Naruto clutching his soul. Before anyone could react, the eye opened, sucking in everything around it and exposing a row of razor-sharp teeth. No, please no, no. Zabuza's physical body started to move toward the void, but he was silenced as the vortex engulfed him. Naruto turned to face the now shaking Haku and said, "Haku," as he kept moving forward and put his fingers around Haku's throat. When he saw the demonic hand rise, poised to strike him, crunch, and be thrust through his chest, Haku started to cry. When Naruto tore out Haku's soul, the same thing happened. As Haku's soul was devoured by Naruto, everyone watched in horror. The dark aura that had surrounded Naruto abruptly started to fade, exposing that he was completely healed and that not a single scratch was visible. As Naruto started to stagger, the aura completely vanished into his arm. "Man, that really took a ton of energy out of me," he said, pushing himself to stand and approaching the other members of his squad. "All right, we have to start as soon as possible. I don't currently have the strength to lift Hitaki, so someone else will have to do it. Please go get him." After approaching Kakashi and removing him from the water, Tenku said, "All right, let's go." Naruto turned to face the person he thought was the client and said, "Hey, old man, which way is your house?" Looking at the blonde, Tazuna shuddered and said, "T's T. That W. Way." Naruto nodded his head, saying, "Good." He was about to move forward when he fell to his face, saying, "Ow. Could someone please help me up here?" As they made their way to Tazuna's house, Hinata hurried over and lifted Naruto over her shoulders, saying, "I got you, Naruto. Sama." She then snatched up his sword and started to skip along. Unbeknownst to them, a shadowy presence was hiding among the trees, observing them with gratification and saying, "Well done, my servant." There was still a slight mist covering the pathway, but it would likely clear up eventually as Team Omega, Team Beta, and Tazuna walked down it. As he carried his sword around with Hinata, Naruto remained lifted over her shoulders and scowled in his mind at the idea that a mere ninja could wield his blade. He was certain to apply some seals to the blade to stop this from ever happening again. Naruto sneered that they let someone who depended on a Kekkei Genkai become a Jonin, and that if his Sharingan was ever taken away from him, he would be worthless. Tenku was carrying Kakashi, who had passed out from overusing his Sharingan eye. They kept going until they saw a house in the distance and said, "There it is." Tazuna quickened the pace, and the other members of the team soon followed. Tazuna knocked on the front door, and after waiting for a few minutes, they heard footsteps approaching it. The door opened, revealing a stunning woman with pale skin and dark hair, saying, "2.San." As she continued to speak, the woman embraced Tazuna and said, "Oh 2.San, please don't frighten me again. I was so worried about you and thought Gato would try something." He released her and gestured to the group behind him, saying, "These young ninjas saved my life. I probably would have been dead had they not been there." Tazuna gave her a hug in return. "I'm okay, Tsunami, I'm okay," he said. When Tsunami saw that he was pointing mainly at the white-haired boy who was draped over the white-eyed girl's shoulders, she moved forward and bowed, saying, Thank you for protecting my father. With a snort, Naruto motioned for Hinata to set him down. He told Team Beta, I wouldn't have needed to protect him, had his original protectors not been so incompetent. Sakura started to reprimand Naruto, but was interrupted when the blonde lifted the claws on his left hand, pointed them at her face, and gave her a look that said, if you want to live, keep your mouth shut. Sakura swallowed the lump in her throat and promptly followed the blonde's unspoken command. After lowering his claws and turning to face Tsunami, Naruto said, do you have a place where we can rest? We need to recharge after our battle with Zabuza and his subordinate. When Gato will send more missing nin after us is uncertain. As the group entered, Tsunami nodded her head and said, very well, come inside. Naruto sat down on the couch after Hinata handed him his sword, and Hinata sat beside him. Tenku propped Kakashi on the edge of the couch and she sat down as well. Sasuke, Sakura, and Shino stood while Naruto gazed at them. Alright, I want the three of you to patrol area. Sasuke, you patrol the back of the house. Shino, you use your insects to patrol both sides. Sakura, you keep watch on the front. What right do you have to command me, an Uchiha, an elite, if anything I should be? Sneered Sasuke, looking at the blonde. Naruto aimed his blade at Sasuke's face and released enough killing intent to silence him. Here are some things to keep in mind. Sasuke. 1. Never, ever use that tone of voice around me. Because Kakashi was unable to retreat when he should have, my squad was assigned to lead this mission. And 3. Why are you and your brother the only surviving members of the clan, a traitor and a pampered emo brat if the Uchiha were such an elite clan? Sasuke was about to say something when he scoffed at Naruto. You useless baka, don't even dare speak to Sasuke-kun in that manner. She threw back her fist and was ready to strike Naruto when an enraged Hinata grabbed her arm. You are not worthy of touching Naruto. Sama, so never, ever raise your hand against him. Sakura whimpered behind Sasuke, squealing in pain as she squeezed the pink-haired banshee's arm until a loud crack was heard. These were the ones supposed to protect me. I was practically a dead man, Tazuna said, going pale. Naruto turned to Shino and said, Aburame, do you have anything to say? Shino shook his head hastily, saying, no, no remarks. No issue whatsoever. I'm going to go patrol now. Shino practically bolted out the door. Naruto turned to face Sakura and Sasuke, who were still motionless, and said, well? Naruto turned to face Tenku and said, so? Do you have any spells that can wake up that worthless Jonin right there? He let out some ki, causing them to jump in fear before they ran out the door. Naruto sighed as he relaxed. It's amazing what they will allow to pass the graduation exam nowadays. Pointing to Kakashi, he said. Yes, Tenku said with a nod, would you like me to do it? Nodding his head, Naruto said, by all means. Tenku got up, approached Kakashi, and prepared to recite the spell. Oh, that's it, right there. Tenku froze as Kakashi began to groan in his sleep, perversely laughing. Oh man, that's it, let me feel that soft warm. A pervert. When Kakashi's eyes opened, he saw Hinata laughing, Naruto laughing, and Tenku staring at him with utter hatred after Tenku slapped him so hard in the face that his headband flew off and left a huge red mark on his face. What took place? As soon as Naruto got up and approached Kakashi, the laughter and giggling abruptly stopped. Naruto then snatched the Jonin by the front of his vest and flung him onto the couch. Pulling out a scroll, Naruto thrust it into Kakashi's hand and said, read it now. Kakashi read the contents of the scroll after hastily opening it. I sent Team Omega to help you on your mission, Kakashi Hitaki, but they will be handling this mission entirely. You were meant to turn back if the mission proved too hard for your team, but you have demonstrated that you were unable to do so, and you and your team will suffer harsh punishment when you return to Konoha. Kakashi found the seal and signature of Hiruzen Sarutobi at the bottom. Naruto put the scroll back in his pouch and walked upstairs with Tenku and Hinata in tow. He said, your team is patrolling the perimeter, I suggest you do the same. Afterwards Team Omega had completed the exercise the first week of their formation, and they had started honing their techniques. Kakashi had separated Team Beta for training after patrol, expecting them to use their chakra to affix themselves to a tree and walk up and down it. Sasuke snarled when he saw Naruto crush a stone into dust with his abyssal arm, gaining a power that he, an Uchiha, rightfully deserved despite being a worthless loser. He approached Naruto, who merely gave Sasuke a look and said, what do you want, Uchiha? The words, your powers, give them to me, were spoken. After giving Sasuke a second look, Naruto narrowed his eyes and prepared to punch him with his right arm. You want to repeat that, brat? You heard me, Namikaze, I said. Sasuke sneered, pointing his finger in Naruto's face. Naruto then let out a significant amount of ki, and Sasuke was swiftly grabbed by the throat and raised off the ground. I will treat you the same way I treated the Yondaime's whore if you ever call me a Namikaze or an Uzumaki again. Naruto held up his right arm and indicated to his demonic eye, showing he meant business. Naruto then threw Sasuke to the ground, and a twisted smirk graced his lips. But, he began to charge dark blue chakra into his fingertips. If you really want power, he placed his fingers on Sasuke's forehead. Then have your fill. Sasuke's eyes widened as he screamed in pain as Naruto blasted the chakra into his body. Sakura exclaimed, Sasuke-kun, as she saw Sasuke writhing on the ground. She ran over to his body and looked him over. His chakra network was pulsing madly, and it looked like it was on the verge of imploding in on itself. She turned towards Naruto, who had a twisted grin on his face. You bastard. You did what to him? Turning away, Naruto smiled and said, oh well. He shrugged his shoulders and said, I just obliged the almighty Uchiha's request for power, but it seems he is not worthy. Naruto started to move in Tezuna's direction, but Sakura got up and charged at him while brandishing a kunai. You are a monster. As she attempted to push the kunai into the back of Naruto's head, Naruto's left arm grabbed her wrist. He heard her squeal like a puppy being kicked, and he swung her and smashed her into the trees. Turning back to the tree he was using to practice his new technique, Naruto scoffed. He raised his arm and focused as much of his chakra as he could into his palm, causing the chakra to start to form a point. Perfect, Naruto grinned in satisfaction. That evening at the table with Tezuna, Tsunami, and Tezuna's grandson Inari were Naruto, Tenku, Hinata, Sasuke, Sakura, Shino, and Kakashi. When Kakashi questioned Naruto, he claimed that Sakura and Sasuke were being disobedient because they were suffering from injuries. While eating a bowl of rice, Naruto said, you are all idiots. He paused in the middle of his mouth and turned to face Inari, who appeared to be trembling. After putting down his bowl of rice, Naruto turned to face the boy and said, you mind repeating that, whelp? Inari nearly yelled as Naruto's eyes glowed cyan. All of you are fools. You're just going to die, so why even train? Naruto returned to his rice meal with a sneer. I train to serve my lord's will. Gato is in my way, so I am training to kill him, and everybody associated with him. Naruto took his rice and started eating, cause it looks like nobody in this town has the backbone to do it, and I doubt there ever will be. Shut up. Inari slammed his fists on the table. You don't know how difficult things are for us here, so what right do you have to speak? You have no idea how difficult suffering is. After setting down his bowl of rice, Naruto opened his mouth and said, we have no idea how difficult suffering is. Naruto looked at the speaker and said, that's a laugh, kid. Trembling and gritting her teeth, Tenku glared at the boy and said, the only thing shinobi know is suffering, but not even they will be able to compare to the suffering we have had to go through. Tenku got up and left, slamming the door behind her. After glancing in Tenku's direction, Naruto got up and said, I am going to go see what is wrong with her. I will be back in a little while. He then opened the door and left for the forest. Alongside Tenku as she tried to contain her tears, Tenku ran through the forest, saying, how dare that brat? How dare he say they don't know suffering? He wouldn't last a day in their shoes. She eventually stopped running when she arrived at the lake's edge, where the light from the full moon was reflected off the water. Why can't I forget? Why'd I still have this pain in my heart? Tenku collapsed to her knees and started sobbing uncontrollably. Leaning against a nearby rock, she worked as hard as she could. Tenku's head shot up as she turned over and saw Naruto approaching her. He paused and sat down beside the young angel, asking, what's wrong, Tenku? Nothing, Tenku said, turning to face the ground. Bullshit. Tenku snapped her head in Naruto's direction, who was wearing a severe expression. I can see it in your eyes, you've been hurt. It's none of your business, Tenku growled as he turned away. Naruto let out a sigh and put his hand beneath Tenku's chin, making her recoil a little. She turned her head to face him, and he gave her a tender glance, saying, maybe not, but maybe I can help. It's a long story. Are you sure you want to hear it? Tenku looked down as she broke out of Naruto's grasp and stared at the water. After a minute of waiting, Naruto decided it wasn't worth waiting for her to explain, and he got up and started to leave. Tenku was hugging herself and trembling a little when Naruto turned to face her. Naruto smiled and sat down, saying, if it brings our team closer, it can be as long as you like. As she gazed up at the moon, Tenku sighed and said, well, when I was younger, my father, the leader of the angel tribe I belonged to, thought of me as just a clan servant. Tenku curled into herself and said, one day, I was walking through the forest, trying to find Wolf's Bane for my father. He had tasked me with finding it for one of his secret projects, one that only he and the council were aware of. My mother, my true mother, had died in childbirth, and the only consolation I ever gained was from a few of my fellow angels, but eventually they abandoned me for the promise of greater glory in the name of Kami. She started to hesitate a little when Naruto asked, "What happened?" Tenku inhaled deeply as she went on. My father had instructed me to either return with the wolf's bane or not at all after I had searched for it for 7 days. I finally passed out close to the forest's center. I anticipated dying there, failing in my clan's name, and never achieving any kind of honor until... A slight tug at her lips caught Naruto's attention as he leaned closer. Until what? As she gazed at the moon, Tenku exhaled with joy and said, "Until I met her, she had located me in the middle of the forest and taken me back to her modest cave home. I woke up to the sight of the most stunning woman I had ever laid eyes on. She was the definition of beauty, with long, silky black hair, stunning emerald eyes, and lovely fair skin." Tenku wiped away a tear and said, "I lived with her for 2 years, and I grew to call her mother. I had never been happier in my entire life. I believed that Kami Sama herself had truly blessed me with my happiness, but then that day arrived." She started to shiver even more, and Naruto noticed. "Tenku, what happened?" As tears streamed down her cheeks, Tenku shook her head and said, "No, I don't want to say it." She started to leave, but Naruto grabbed her arm and she turned as he got up and took hold of her shoulders. Tenku tightened his grip in a reassuring manner and said, "I just want to know more about you, Tenku. That's all." Tenku looked at Naruto as he raised his right arm and opened its eye, saying, "This eye does not just have the power to torture an enemy, but to see into the minds of others." "All right," Tenku said, swallowing the lump in her throat and nodding her head. Naruto grinned and raised his arm to speak. "Boshi no Shinin, Kinin." Tenku's eyes grew wide as Naruto's mind was triggered to recall Tenku's past, including the day she wouldn't say. The memory of Tenku after finding some herbs to season tonight's meal. Tenku ran back through the forest to the cave where she and her new mother resided. She turned a corner to go to the cave, but she stopped when she noticed that the entrance had been desecrated by some kind of fire. What happened she asked. "Ah, please do not stop." When Tenku heard her mother screaming, she sprinted to the cave, entered, and proceeded down the catacombs in the direction of the screams. When she eventually reached the main chamber, she was confronted by a scene that would haunt her for the rest of her life. At least 24 members of her former tribe were present in the room, with her father standing in front of her. Her mother, on the other hand, was pinned to the wall, completely naked, and appeared to have been beaten. Tenku screamed, "Ka-chan!" as she ran to her mother. When 2 angels in holy armor stopped her advance halfway there, they took her by the arms and pinned her to the ground, not at all gently. He approached her mother and gave her the backhand, saying, "Filthy succubus," with a sneer. "To think, my own daughter would dare to call this creature mother." She spit out blood and yelled at Tenku's father, saying, "You have no right to call her your daughter, especially after what you did to her. What would a succubus know of us angels? We are the greatest beings in the entire universe, and we deserve to be the chosen race, the one acknowledged as the only creators of bloodlines." Tenku's father spat at the woman who was pinned to the wall. "You are all garbage, the rest of you." He turned to face the sobbing Tenku and slashed across her face. "You will watch this," he said, reaching for his belt and spreading the woman's legs. Final memory Naruto, who didn't have to see the others to know what Tenku's father had done, ripped himself from Tenku's head and started to pant in disgust and rage. That bastard. That fucking abomination. That fucking cretin. That damned angel scum. He screamed in rage as he stood up and attacked the nearby trees. He turned the surrounding field into a battlefield by tearing a tree out of the ground and throwing it into multiple other trees. "Tenku, I can't say that I know how you feel, because frankly I don't, and I probably never will." Naruto put his hand on her shoulder and said, "But don't think for a moment that we can't understand." Tenku turned to face Naruto, who was crying, and said, "You know how I was forced to live, and you know how much pressure was put on Hinata when she was a child. We can relate to that, at least partially." Tenku wiped away her tears and sniffed, "Thank you, Naruto-kun." As he chose to make light of her, Naruto smiled and said, "Oh, are we getting to know one another now?" The color that Tenku blushed matched Hinata's blush. How touching. Naruto froze in place and turned around to see the abyssal god standing behind him. He went to bow, but was stopped, saying, "Now is not the time for that, Naruto. I have an incredibly important task for you." He took out a scroll and put it in Naruto's hands, saying, "I need you to head here immediately. It is of the utmost importance that you go. I have already sent a messenger to your Transcendent Berserker teammate, and she is probably on her way. As for the mission itself, kill all invaders." The abyssal god disappeared in a swirl of black energy as Naruto glanced at the map. The map pointed to the center of the island and showed an island just off the coast of the island they were on. After putting the map away, Naruto turned to face Tenku and said, "Come on." With Tenku at his heels, he dashed in the direction of the island. After 10 minutes on their way to the location, Naruto and Tenku met up with Hinata and proceeded to the island. The three watermen crossed the vast expanse of the sea toward the island, and as they approached, they heard metal hitting metal. They accelerated rapidly as they ran in the direction of the coast. Finally, Naruto took a step on the shore and ran across the beach with Hinata and Tenku following closely behind. He was about to cross into the trees when he suddenly froze and started to fumble in his steps as he felt his power drain from him. Naruto saw the approaching beach and ran across as fast as he could. If his lord said it was urgent, then he was not going to fail. A faint pulse stretched across the sky as Naruto looked up, thinking, M.My power, what the hell? In the meantime, Hinata ran towards Naruto and fumbled as she felt her own power ebbing from her body. Tenku noticed the pulse and her blood ran cold, saying, "Oh Kami. Sama no." Like Hinata, Naruto pushed himself back up, feeling as though his newfound power had been cut in half, even though he was still many times stronger than he had been as a weakling human. Tenku felt her strength grow as she passed through the area where Naruto and Hinata had gone. "Oh Kami. Sama, why are you here?" she asked, looking up to see smoke rising from a cavern. "Up there?" She gestured toward the cavern where the smoke was erupting. Naruto gave a nod, saying, "All right, let's go." Hinata and Tenku were right behind him as he ran up to the cave. Upon arriving at the cave, Naruto unlocked his blade and declared, "As instructed by my master. Kill all invaders. Go." Hinata trailed closely behind Naruto as he leapt into the cave, and Tenku turned to face the sky. She inhaled deeply before running in after the blonde, saying, "Kami. Sama, if you are watching, please don't let this be what I think it is." After the three of them crossed the smoke, they discovered that they were in a tunnel that led to a bright light at the end of the tunnel. Naruto ran in the direction of the light, and as they got closer, they were able to identify some features. A lot of white specks were flying around, but there were also a few black specks. They were able to identify wings on the specks, followed by humanoid shapes, and finally, they gasped as they saw the scene in front of them. The cavern's base was filled with a red flowing fluid with a whirlpool in the center, and two distinct armies were flying about the caves. They were inside a huge basin-shaped chasm with a city carved into the walls. The ones that they recognized as white specks were dressed in exquisite armor and carried around with lances in their great white feathered wings. The others were humanoid beings with big black wings and pale skin. They had no weapons and appeared to be doing okay, but not well enough. At that moment, Naruto recognized what he was witnessing: a full-scale carnage between vampires and angels, with the vampires losing. When Tenku lived among her tribe, they preached love and peace rather than rape and genocide, so she was shocked by what she saw. They were attacking a vampire city. "Hinata-chan, use whatever skills you have and kill as many of the angels as possible," Naruto growled as he turned to face Hinata. "Fight if you have the resolve to. I won't hold it against you for not wanting to harm your tribe." Naruto then turned to face Tenku. Then Naruto slammed his palm into the ground and yelled, "Kachiyose no Jutsu, Lushin no Hisanukami," as he charged blue chakra into his right arm, causing the eye to glow a vivid purple. The ground beneath Naruto split open as a raging torrent was revealed as he slammed his palm into the ground. Angels and vampires paused to observe the scene in front of them, and the vampires were ecstatic to see that their god's messenger had arrived, a portal to the abyss. A great howl reverberated throughout the chamber, and a figure appeared in the spinning torrent of darkness, flapping its wings as the portal was fully open. "Yes, we can crush these invaders," exclaimed the nearest vampire with joy. "My brethren, attack!" he yelled at the remaining vampires. As they assaulted the angels, they all let out joyful screams. As he ran towards the edge with Hinata in her berserker form, Naruto smiled and said, "Come forth, Lushin." A red and black figure flew out of the portal and headed towards the angels as Naruto started to fall. A humanoid wolf with red markings all over its body and a pair of bat-like wings that were black and red, the figure howled and glared at the angels before taking off for them. When the angels noticed the approaching wolf, one of them yelled behind them, "Archangels attack." When Tenku heard the order, he yelled, "No," but it was already too late. Hundreds of angels in full body armor suddenly descended on the vampires and attacked anything that wasn't an angel. A few of the incoming archangels were knocked down by Lushin and Naruto's attacks and strikes, but the others were evading them and moving in the direction of the vampires. The number of vampires was rapidly decreasing. Within a few minutes, none would remain. Tenku collapsed to her knees and started sobbing because she was at a loss for what to do. These angels were attempting to carry out a genocide against a vampire city, but she simply couldn't bring herself to attack them. Perish. Tenku quickly leaned over the edge after raising her head. A solitary vampire, who appeared to be about 15 years old, at least by ninja standards, was fending off multiple angels by herself. She was taking out multiple angels at once, but one of them was fortunate enough to hit her. Tenku's eyes squinted at the angel, then widened because she recognized it as the same angel who had stolen everything from her. Her dad, alongside the vampire. A big angel slashed across Kuroheim's back with a cheap shot, and she tried to stand up, but was flung against the wall. Turning to face the other angels by his side, the angel grinned and said, "We are finally getting rid of the heretics who oppose Kami. Sama's will. As we kill this wench, let's celebrate." Like the other angels, he lifted his lance. "If I am going to die, I am going to die fighting," Kurohime said, allowing her wings to tear from her back and allowing her claws to grow longer. Kami. Sama's wings, protect the defenseless. Kurohime was surrounded by a white barrier as he and the others looked up. As they pointed up to the origin of the shield, the angels were startled. As she glared at the other angels, Tenku was floating in midair with her pure white wings spread wide. "To think our tribe has sunk so low," she said, holding out her hand. "Wings of heaven, bind their wickedness." Out of her fingertips, long chains of pure heavenly light encircled the angels. As Tenku swooped down and landed beside Kurohime, the angels collapsed. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, it's going to take a hell of a lot more than just some angels to kill me." Kurohime nodded her head as she stood up and turned to face the battle zone. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have some angels to kill." She spread her wings wide and was ready to take off when Tenku stopped her. "You are seriously wounded. You will be injured further in the battlefield if you head up there. Wounds can injure one's body, but not one's spirit. As long as a single breath draws from my body, I will never allow these bastards to hurt my people," Kurohime said, pushing Tenku away from her. Kurohime lifted off the ground and spread her wings. With the intention of halting the actions of her tribe, Tenku turned to face the shackled angels and said, "You will pay for this, father." She then spread her own wings and flew into the air. Alongside Hinata, a dark laughter reverberated throughout the cavern as Hinata slashed her bladed claws across an archangel's chest, causing her to smile contentedly beneath her helmet. "That's right, more, give me more blood, you bastards." As she descended, she struck an archangel with the side of her body, causing him to be impaled on their spears and thrust into a group of lesser angels. As she caught a falling lance, Hinata laughed and said, "Ooh, a shiny pointed object." She turned to face a number of approaching angels and said, "I wonder how many of them I can hit with this one." She threw the spear into the air and caught it, focusing on the incoming angels and smiling as she threw it towards them, capturing them all in one shot. "Oh yeah, bullseye." When Hinata turned around, two archangels were staring at her and saying, "You dirty berserker, you will pay for your transgressions against Kami. Sama." As Hinata remained motionless, the two charged forward, thrusting their spears forward with the intention of impaling her. She merely grabbed the spear's blades and broke them off the spear pole. After throwing the two blades into the air and catching them, Hinata said, "Bye, before thrusting them into the two archangels' heads. "Man, oh man. This is so much fun." Hinata laughed as she saw their bodies fall to the ground. She laughed gleefully as she continued to chop down angel after angel while soaring through the air on her lavender wings. Alongside Naruto, while attempting to keep Lucian in his grasp, Naruto dodged an archangel's blow and slashed them in the middle with his blade. Angels may not be as resilient, but they certainly outnumbered vampires, and he cursed as he looked around, seeing that the vampires were being killed off one by one until only a handful remained. Gazing at the approaching archangels, Naruto sighed and said, "Well, it seems like it's time to use that jutsu." He snapped his fingers and dispelled Lucian, sending him to the ground. He extended his right hand and began to charge chakra into it. Blue chakra moved across his arm and formed a point in the palm of his hand. Good, keep going." Naruto then made the point spin. Almost there. The air began to flow around the spinning point. Now, as Naruto screamed, the point reached out for around 12 feet. Shuoren Buaseki Ken. The blade launched hundreds of tiny drills in the direction of the angels. Some used the last of the remaining vampires as living shields, while others dispersed, attempting to dodge the oncoming blows. With a sneer of disgust, Naruto noticed that one vampire was still alive and being pulled to the ground by Tenku. "So, she did join the fight," he said, grinning as he turned back to face the approaching angels. Better late than never. As his technique dissolved, the remaining archangels and angels charged towards Naruto. Boshi no Shinin, Akumu, caused the angel's eyes to enlarge for a moment before they screamed in pain and agony as they fell towards the red pool below, but they failed to notice Naruto's smile as the eye on his arm opened. Naruto laughed, but then he realized he was unable to fly. Oh shit, only 30 feet separated Naruto and the red liquid before an ecstatic Hinata swept him away. Naruto laughed when she said, "Oh Naruto. Sama, you realize you will have to repay me for this later." Her voice was sweet and sing. Sanji, but there was a tinge of lust in it. Yes, I guess I will.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.